Chapter 32:47. The Great Tao is the simplest. In the battle, Lin Sun's mind was clear. His every move was accompanied by thousands of Tao and Dharma, but it was all integrated into a casual punch and a palm. Vaguely, it was as if all the flourishing had fallen, and the Tao was wonderful and natural. This heavenly shaman's path towards the Tao uses destruction as his foundation, yet he's able to forge eternal karma within destruction. He can be said to possess peerless talent that's rarely seen since the ancient times. During the battle, Lin Sun could clearly sense the power of the great path of Heaven Wizard. It wouldn't take too much effort to defeat the opponent, but Lin didn't do so. He was calmly experiencing such a struggle of Tao. This battle lasted for a long time. After an entire day and night passed, the Heaven Shaman's figure dispersed and vanished like a wisp of smoke. He hadn't been suppressed and defeated, and he'd been forcefully exhausted to the point of dispersing. Until the end of the battle, everyone was unable to recover from their shock for a long time, and there was shock and wonder on their faces. What shocked them was that even the powerful Taoist karma of Heaven Wizard was no match for Lin Sun. What was frustrating was that after this battle, Lin Sun still didn't attract the Chaos Tao fruit. This was undoubtedly too unbelievable and even puzzling. Why was this happening? At the peak of Thousand Bird Mountain, under the sky, with his hands clasped behind his back, Lin Sun stood still in silence. There were numerous miraculous and unbelievable comprehensions in his heart, and they seemed like trickles of water that ceaselessly roiled, causing his mind to fall into a profound state of comprehension. After a long time, he restrained his thoughts and let out a light breath before he said in his heart, comparatively speaking, even though the Tao karma of the Heaven Shamans is extremely formidable, its path towards the Tao can only be considered to be on par with the Gon tribe's master of destiny. Pay 2. Congratulations to fellow Taoist Lin for adding another great victory to your journey. Suddenly, a heavy voice resounded, and it revealed heartfelt admiration. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Lin. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Lin. Immediately, a wave of congratulations rang out in the surrounding area, echoing through the heavens and earth for a long time. Those experts had spent countless years in the mortal transformation realm, and they were all old monsters on the boundless path of cultivation. But now, when facing Lin Sun, they all had a sense of admiration as if they were looking up to a high mountain. The one who understands the Tao is the teacher. Lin Sun had won more than 800 battles in less than 4 months, which was an unprecedented miracle. Compared to him, how could the heroes of the world not bow down and sigh in admiration? Lin Sun cupped his hands in obeisance with a smile. On the big road, we are all peers. I wish you all a better future. With that, he swaggered off. Guys, in my opinion, Lin Sun obviously consumed a lot of energy at the end of the battle. If someone attacked him at that time, suddenly a gray-robed man spoke. But before he could finish speaking, the expressions of the Almighties standing near the gray-robed man changed slightly, and they distanced themselves from him. It was as if they wanted to draw a line with him. The gray-robed man immediately shut his mouth, and his expression changed. He seemed to be very wronged as he said, "Everyone, I was just saying, why are you so nervous?" However, no one paid any attention to him. Instead, they hid even further away from him. Such a scene made the gray-robed man uneasy. After a while, he murmured bitterly, "Lin Sun's power has become so strong." 7 days later, soaring Dom Lake, Long Nation, a battle of Tao was taking place. One was the Dharma of Tao left by Shur, the patriarch of Diana's sect, which ranked 7th in the universal Taoism. The other was Lin Sun. The battle had been going on for 4 hours. Under the sky, the Buddhist country was vast and magnificent, and brilliant lotus flowers were floating everywhere. The chanting of sutras resounded like a tide. Vaguely, hundreds of millions of phantoms of the Buddhist country could be seen. There were Buddhas discussing Tao and Bodhisattvas explaining the Dharma, showing a grand atmosphere of boundless light and boundless bliss. This was the Tao of Shur, the patriarch of Diana's sect, which was based on the Zen heart. Lin Sun, who was competing with him, sat alone in the void. His figure was ethereal and indifferent. There was neither a vision of Tao nor an earth-shattering power. It was plain, but the Buddhas couldn't shake his state of mind at all, and sure, F.A. Bodhisattva couldn't hurt a hair on his body. Even the Yongchang Buddhist country, brilliant and boundless, couldn't invade the place where Lin Sun sat cross-legged. He was like a rock, unmoving as he watched, sensed, and experienced just like that, and he naturally possessed a calm and transcendent bearing. After a long time, the Buddha sighed and disappeared. The Buddhas shook their heads and disappeared. All the Buddhist countries in the sky disappeared, and even the ethereal sound of Sanskrit disappeared. Shu's figure also disappeared at this moment. Lin Sun stood up, shook his muscles and bones, took out the flagon and drank a mouthful of wine. He said with a smile, "Whether it's Buddha or devil, if they can't save me, they will become nothing in the blink of an eye." 10 days later, Dragon Sparrow Ridge, Star Bridge Country. "Senior, sorry for offending you before." Lin Sun cupped his hands to salute. The battle made him defeat the Tao left by Su Yin, the patriarch of Spirit Sect. The rule power, which ranked 8th in the Universal Taoism, also disappeared. Half a month later, on the Wind Cliff Mountain, 800 miles away from Rome country, a sword swept across the sky and covered the 9 heavens. Countless stars fell with it, just like withering fireworks, and then dissipated. The 9 heavens galaxy was the Tao of Yuan Shu, the patriarch of Yuan sect, a supreme Tao ranked 6th in the Universal Taoism. "Senior, if we meet again in the future, I will definitely treat you to a drink." Lin Sun cupped his hands. At this point, the Tao left by the patriarchs of the 4 ancestral courts were all defeated by Lin Sun. When the news came out, the entire mortal transformation world was shocked silent. Could it be that Lin Sun can be like Chen Linkong back then, challenging the heavens with his sword and ranking first? Some old antiques couldn't calm down, and their hearts trembled. Many years ago, Chen Linkong arrived at the mortal transformation world and traveled the world like a wild crane. He didn't fight, and just played around in the world. 33 years later, he swept across the sky with his sword and defeated the great Confucian immortal, who ranked first in the Universal Taoism, and replaced him. This incident caused a great commotion in the mortal transformation world. Everyone thought that Chen Linkong's cultivation was already close to the peak of the boundless realm, which was why he was able to reach the top and stand shoulder to shoulder with the other 4 supreme existences. Lin Sun's Tao fruit of chaos hasn't appeared yet. This means that he has to defeat any one of the 5 Tao to have a chance to attract the Tao fruit of chaos and ascend the heavenly gate. But what if he loses? Then he will be trapped here like us. Even someone as powerful as him could be trapped in the mortal transcendent realm. The world was abuzz with discussions. It had been nearly half a year since Lin Sun entered the mortal transformation world, and he hadn't lost a single battle. But the situation now was different. Amongst the opponents before him, there were only 5 Tao manifestations that were comparable to the number 1 Tao laws of the universe. They were the Master of the Heart, Golden Cicada, Black Crow, Chen Linkong, and the Ape Ancestor. Each of them had unfathomable power. Lin Sun hadn't lost a single battle, and the Tao of the 4 ancestral courts patriarchs had been defeated one by one. But when Lin Sun's opponents were only the 5 supreme existences, no one was able to defeat him. He was certain that he would win. The 5 supreme existences were too powerful. Being on par with the first was an inconceivable thing, and it also showed how extraordinary the Tao karma left behind by those 5 existences was. While the world was in an uproar, Lin Sun had arrived at a place called Pine Mist City in the Tao Kingdom. A sword steel stood in a pine forest. The sword steel was 3 feet long, like a sword in the sky. It was left behind by Chen Linkong. After studying the sword steel for a moment, Lin Sun suddenly said, "I don't want outsiders to witness this battle. Please leave quickly." Just these words alone caused many great figures in the vicinity of Pine Mist City to be instantly surprised, and even though they were bewildered, they still sensibly retreated successively. Of course, they couldn't really leave. Such a battle would easily disturb the phenomena of the heavens and the earth and draw down the energy of the Tao laws in the surroundings. Even if one watched from afar, it was still possible to discern some clues. But Lin Sun had expected this, so he didn't say anything further. Clang! In the next moment, a clear and melodious sword howl resounded and surged in the sky above Pine Mist City, causing the clouds in all directions to collapse. The heavens and the earth suddenly changed, and it seemed as if they'd fallen into boundless, dazzling sharpness that pierced their hearts to the point their hearts trembled, and even their divine sense felt as if it was being severed. It was even to the extent that many supreme existences that were watching from afar were injured on the spot, and their souls suffered a terrifying impact, causing their expressions to turn grim. It was also at this moment that they realized that it wasn't that Lin Sun didn't allow them to watch the battle, but they would surely suffer backlash if they watched the battle with their cultivations. For a time, the emotions of these supreme existences roiled, and they revealed shocked expressions. A single battle caused boundless realm figures like them to pay the price for even watching. How terrifying was this? Clang! Before they could react, another sword howl resounded, and its impetus wasn't inferior to the previous one at all. After that, sword chi filled the world within Pine Mist City, while sword insight shook the heavens. Everyone was clearly aware that the battle had already begun, but the details and profundities within it weren't something they were able to pry into. Time flowed by slowly. Those supreme existences could only wait amidst suffering. They were waiting for the outcome of the battle to be decided. But no one had expected that this battle would be so long. From the moment the sun rose to the moment it set, from the moment all living beings in the world busied themselves until they returned home and went to sleep, day after day passed. The clanging sword howls came and went, and most of the time, it fell into silence. When everyone thought the curtains to the battle had been drawn, another sword howl suddenly resounded. The entire Pine Mist City was filled with a glow of sharpness that didn't disperse for a long time. 7 days later, profound God domain, primordial world. Chun Linkong sat casually far away from the thatched cottage, and he held a bamboo pole in his hand as he fished before a stream in a leisurely manner. The stream was clear, and there were utterly no fish. But Chun Linkong was enjoying it. Suddenly, his brows raised as he suddenly tossed away the bamboo pole in his hand, and then he stood up while his eyes revealed a wisp of undisguised surprise. This kid actually already possesses such attainments on the boundless path towards the Tao. Chun Linkong was stunned on the spot, and ripples arose in his heart. You're unable to calm down after being surpassed. Laughter resounded from within the thatched cottage. Grandfather, you know as well. Chun Linkong turned around with a subtle expression, and he seemed to be delighted yet slightly disappointed. The universe Tao laws were formed from the quintessence of the ruins of Tao. It can accommodate your sword Tao, yet can't accommodate his grand Tao. The voice resounded once more from within the thatched cottage. This is the variable. Chun Linkong sighed lightly, and then he said with a smile, I don't mind being surpassed by him. After all, it's the Tao karma I left behind all those years ago. If Lin Sun is even unable to surpass me, then I'm afraid many people will be disappointed. Don't talk about all this now. Let's wait and see. The voice resounded slowly from within the thatched cottage, and it carried a trace of rare anticipation. Chapter 3248. State of Tao. Pine Mist City. In a misty pine forest, Lin Sun stood there. His chi was almost exhausted, and there were many shocking bloody sword marks on his skin. The battle lasted for 7 days. Lin Sun competed with Chun Linkong purely with sword Tao. Although he won in the end, his cultivation was almost exhausted. As for those injuries, Lin Sun didn't care. If I knew it would be like this, I wouldn't have tried to be brave and only competed with sword Tao. The corners of Lin Sun's mouth twitched, and he smiled bitterly. Suddenly, he raised his eyes and looked into the distance. Many powerful figures appeared in Pine Mist City, and they were approaching the pine forest. Soon, these powerful figures saw Lin Sun, and then they were horrified. How serious his injuries were. Even his entire body's chi activity was almost exhausted. This was the first time they saw Lin Sun in such a sorry state in a fight for the Tao. It could be seen from this how powerful the Tao left by Chun Linkong was after 7 days and 7 nights of fierce battle. Of course, Lin Sun won in the end. Even if it was a Pyrrhic victory, it was still shocking. At least Lin Sun had proved that his cultivation was sufficient to be ranked first in the heavenly cycle Tao laws by this battle. However, this was also the reason why people were puzzled. Because the chaotic Tao fruit that belonged to Lin Sun still hadn't appeared. This simply overturned the understanding of those powerful figures present. Fellow Taoist Lin, I have a healing divine item. Someone took out a jade bottle and was about to hand it over. Seeing this, the others hurriedly took out various divine medicines and rare treasures to give to Lin Sun to heal his injuries. Seeing this, Lin Sun shook his head with a smile. Thank you for your kindness, but I can deal with these minor injuries myself. Suddenly, a piercingly cold voice resounded. Are they really just minor injuries? But why do I see that you're almost unable to hold on? Immediately after, a piercingly cold killing intent surged into the scene, causing the atmosphere to change abruptly. A group of figures appeared out of thin air, led by an extraordinarily handsome man in a green robe. He didn't conceal his hatred and killing intent towards Lin Sun, and there was a trace of inexplicable excitement in his expression. Behind the man in a green robe were more than 10 powerful figures, and every one of them was in the boundless realm. When they looked at Lin Sun, their eyes were filled with coldness. Ji Tianqing, what are you doing? A nearby almighty spoke with a sullen expression. Ji Tianqing, Lin Sun's eyes showed a hint of understanding. It turned out to be this guy. All those years ago in the Ocean of Destiny, Xin Hu Lei Song and the others had seized the opportunity to head to the ruins of Dao, and they'd given it to Ji Tianqing, Zhichong, and Yu Wuhan in the end. Now that Ji Tianqing suddenly appeared here with a group of people, Lin Sun was not surprised. Everyone, this matter has nothing to do with all of you, so it's best if you don't get involved. Otherwise, you won't be able to get away if you get involved in this grudge. Ji Tianqing glanced at the Almighties nearby and said coldly. Many mighty figures' expressions changed. There were also people who sneered, not fearing Ji Tianqing and the others. I didn't see you all dare to show yourselves before, but now that Dao friend Lin is in a bad situation, you all really are despicable. Old monstering. Are you going to get involved? An old man with a white beard beside Ji Tianqing asked with a hoarse voice. The supreme being who sneered earlier immediately hesitated. Who is Ji Shi to you? Suddenly, Lin Sun looked at Ji Tianqing and asked, You're about to die, and you want to claim your relationship with me? Ji Tianqing sneered. No, I just want to choose a way for you to die. Lin Sun also laughed. All right, cut the crap. Do you want to die together or one by one? His chi was obviously extremely weak, but his expression was calm, and he was talking and laughing freely. His demeanor made many powerful figures nearby secretly admire him. Ji Tianqing and the others couldn't help but be surprised. How could they not know how powerful Lin Sun's cultivation was now? In the past 6 months, the whole mortal world had been talking about things related to Lin Sun, and each of them could be said to be extremely sensational. This even made Ji Tianqing and the others give up the idea of revenge many times. But this time, when they learned that Lin Sun and Chun Linkong's Taoism had been fighting for many days without a clear winner, they finally realized that the opportunity had come. Sure enough, when they arrived, they saw that Lin Sun was already seriously injured, and his chi was on the verge of drying up. It seemed that at this moment, any one of them could easily kill him. But now, they were a little uncertain about Lin Sun's challenge. It was because Lin Sun's power was too great, and his strength had already shocked the world. As the saying went, the tiger's prestige still existed even after death, and the dragon's Taoism still existed. Who wouldn't be afraid of him? Why? You're already here, but you don't dare to make a move? Lin Sun's words were filled with sarcasm. Ji Tianqing took a deep breath and said, Everyone, let's attack together. If something goes wrong, We'll retreat immediately. Okay. The people around him agreed. But just when they were about to make a move, Lin Sun spoke again. Seniors, let me deal with these idiots who are courting death. His voice spread between heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing and the others were stunned at first, and then their expressions changed. In the range of their divine senses, a group of figures appeared in the distance. It was Xingjian Gorge, Fu Nanli, Ren Futian, the Mountain Wind Pathmaster, Xiaohe Mo Bays, and Mu Changyan. At the same time, Sun Daoyan and God Lord Linglong appeared out of thin air in another direction. The situation instantly changed. These bastards didn't dare to show themselves before, but they finally revealed themselves this time. Xingjian Gorge chuckled. No one knew that in the last 3 months, Xingjian Gorge and the others have been following Lin Sun in every struggle of the Great Tao. Their goal was simple. They were worried that their enemies would take advantage of this opportunity to cause trouble. This is called courting death. The nearby Sun Daoyan coldly said, Young friend Lin, why don't you let us deal with these people? God Lord Linglong's voice was as gentle as flowing water. Ha ha. Senior is also worried that this Lin won't be able to fight. Lin Sun threw his head back and laughed, his voice echoing through the surroundings. Let's go. The hearts of Ji Tianqing and the others sank. They didn't care if Lin Sun was just putting on an act or not. They decisively decided to retreat. But at this moment, clang, a bolt of sword chi suddenly appeared, and with a wave of Lin Sun's sleeve, it shot through the air. In an instant, around Ji Tianqing, a total of 11 Boundless Realm Major power silhouettes had just carried out spatial translocation when they suddenly split into pieces, fresh blood splattering out. It was like a blossoming of scarlet fireworks. This terrifying scene almost caused Ji Tianqing's soul to leap out of his body. But in the next moment, he didn't dare to move recklessly. This was because a wisp of sword chi had silently reached his throat. The sword chi was suffused with the power of the laws, and Ji Tianqing could smell an intense aura of death. The nearby experts were all shocked by this sight, and they couldn't help but look at Lin Sun. They saw that Lin Sun's blood-drenched figure was like a withered tree that had come back to life, and a peerless vitality was rising and exploding. In just a few blinks of an eye, all the wounds on his body had disappeared. Other than his blood-stained clothes, there was no other sign of injury. Even his exhausted chi activity was recovering at a crazy rate. Could it be that Lin Sun was pretending earlier? Many experts had a strange look on their faces. When they looked at Ji Tianqing again, there was a hint of pity in their eyes. These guys were really stupid to the point of courting death. At this moment, Ji Tianqing's expression was uncertain, and he said, Didn't you ask me about the relationship between Ji Shi and me? Let me tell you, she's my grandniece. Everyone had a strange look on their faces. Previously, Ji Tianqing was sure that Lin Sun was trying to curry favor with him, but now that he was about to die, he revealed his relationship with a woman named Ji Shi. This was clearly begging for mercy. Puff! Before anyone could react, the sword chi at his throat cut off Ji Tianqing's head, and even his spirit was smashed into pieces by the sword chi. Everyone was startled. However, Lin Sun shook his head. He respected Ji Shi, but he didn't respect those who regarded him as an enemy. Seniors, how about going for a drink? Lin Sun looked at the people of Travel Sword Gorge and said with a smile, That's for the best. The people of Travel Sword Gorge laughed. On this day, the news of Lin Sun defeating Chun Lin Kong's Dharmalaksana spread, once again shocking the entire mortal transformation. And the suicidal behavior of Ji Tianqing and the others became a joke in the mortal transformation. Another half a month passed. Lin Sun's figure appeared in a nameless canyon in snow country. A scripture appeared here, flowing with black and white light, intertwining with each other, creating a wonderful scene of pure and turbid blending and the rotation of yin and yang. Boom! When Lin Sun's chi spread over, the scripture suddenly opened, reflecting a black and white aura that soared into the sky, and finally turned into an extremely tall old ape. He carried 2 swords on his back and was dressed in a gray robe. When his eyes opened and closed, black and white light flowed, frightening people. Ape Ancestor, an old servant of the absolute beginning ruler. Since the absolute beginning ruler was trapped in the sword lock, he had been serving the absolute beginning ruler's first servant, Black Crow. His Dharmalaksana had long been ranked first in the heavenly Tao laws. Clang, clang. Behind Ape Ancestor, two Taoist swords, one black and one white, rose into the sky. The vast sword intent turned into pure and turbid air. The pure air formed the sky, and the turbid air formed the earth. It was compatible with yin and yang, and it was mysterious and unpredictable. In the twinkling of an eye, heaven and earth seemed to have turned into a Tai Chi diagram, and the sword intent rushed into it. With a thought of Ape Ancestor, all the power of the sword intent enveloped Lin's Sun. The perfect yin and yang Tao of Tai Chi. Lin's Sun leaped up and met it. Boom! A great battle broke out. This battle wasn't any weaker than the battle with Chun Linkong. The difference was that Lin's Sun and Chun Linkong had been fighting with Sword Tao. At this moment, Lin's Sun was no longer limited to the power of one Tao, but released all his Taoism. One day later, clang! An earth-shattering collision sounded. Lin's Sun's fist force, like a furnace that could suppress the past, the present, and the future, hit the black and white swords in the hands of Ape Ancestor. Then, the two swords exploded inch by inch. Boom! The yin and yang Tao, which had turned into a Tai Chi diagram, collapsed like crumbs of paper. Ape Ancestor's towering figure dissipated amidst the destruction. Looking at Lin's Sun again, although he was injured, his chi was like a sword edge in the sky, unshakable. Chapter 3249. Mysterious God Realm. Black mysterious world. Ape Ancestor sat cross-legged with two swords in front of him, one black and one white. They reflected each other. The white sword was called Ching Pingle. The black sword was called Partridge Sky. The name was given by the absolute beginning ruler. It was said to be a name of the mortal world. To Ape Ancestor, the name was not important. What was important was that this pair of swords had long been a part of his path. They had accompanied him to conquer various eras, and they had accompanied him in the endless years of cultivation. The swords were like his life. I wonder why the sect leader left Miss there. Was it to let Miss avoid trouble? Or was it because he was worried that Miss would cause trouble? Or both? Ape Ancestor's fingers gently stroked the pair of swords as he fell into deep thought. The sect leader's thoughts were as deep as the sea. Especially after arriving at the ruins of Tao, he was even more unfathomable. Back then, when he was trapped by the swordsman's sword lock, the sect leader did not have any complaints. Instead, he sighed and said that it was sad that there was one less opponent in the world. Ape Ancestor did not understand. It was the power of the sword lock that had trapped the sect leader for countless eras. But why did he not hate the swordsman at all? On the contrary, after the swordsman chose to recultivate in reincarnation, the sect leader felt desolate. Suddenly, Ape Ancestor's fingers that were stroking the two swords stopped. Then, his eyes suddenly narrowed, and an uncontrollable look of surprise appeared on his face. That Lin's Sun actually defeated my law of Tao. Clang! Clang! The black and white swords vibrated restlessly. From this, it could be seen how disturbed Ape Ancestor's state of mind was. After a while, Ape Ancestor stood up and hesitated for a long time. In the end, he sighed and gave up on the idea of paying a visit to the sect leader in Mississippi perhaps. This is the variable that the sect leader wants to see? Ape Ancestor murmured. Mortal Transformation Realm. After defeating Ape Ancestor's Law of Tao, Lin's Sun cultivated for half a month before setting off again. Great Wind Mountain, Chi Kingdom. This mountain was tens of thousands of meters high, and there was a temple built on it. In the temple, there was a statue of a god. In the past, there were many people who worshipped it. On this day, Lin's Sun came. He seemed like a tourist as he walked up the stairs leisurely and calmly, and all along the way, he couldn't help but sigh lightly in his heart as he looked at those people that brought along their families to climb up the mountain path just to pray. For ordinary people, when they were powerless to change something, they would usually choose to place their hopes on burning incense and praying. However, as a cultivator, Lin Sun knew that the prayers of the masses in the mortal transformation realm were destined to be nothing more than a mirage. It is better to pray than pray to God. Soon, Lin Sun came to the top of Gale Mountain, where there stood a magnificent temple with row upon row of buildings and abundant incense. At the side of the temple was a pond with lotus flowers and fish swimming in it. Lin Sun's eyes fell on a black lotus seed at the bottom of the pond. Boom! In the next moment, the black lotus seed glowed and transformed into the figure of a black-clothed young woman that soared into the sky. Her snow-white hair fluttered to her slender waist, and her pair of ruby-red eyes were translucent and gorgeous. Black Crow, the first Tao attendant under Absolute Beginning. Rumor had it that Absolute Beginning had once spent 9 years of source energy to forge a supreme Tao foundation for Black Crow, allowing her to step into the boundless realm in one go. With the Absolute Beginning ruler trapped, the 9 tribes of Absolute Beginning were now under Black Crow's control. Whoosh, as soon as the black-clothed young woman appeared, a wisp of black flame floated in the air. A wisp of black-colored flames appeared, and it swept through the sky while dragging a tail behind it. It seemed like a wisp of light that tore apart the ages, and it caused this expanse of the heavens and the earth to change abruptly. A dark, cold, and murderous aura pervaded the air. Then billions of flames surged out like stars and covered the world. Every wisp of flame was like a great world, and the world reflected a mysterious and obscure law of the great Tao. The billions of flames were like billions of great Tao that illuminated the world. All phenomena transform into the Tao, and the Tao grows endlessly, all fusing with the flames. Such attainments are truly remarkable. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. Chen Lin Kong's Tao Karma was fused with the Tao of the sword. Ape Ancestor's Tao Karma was fused with the Tao of Yin and Yang. And Black Crow's Tao Karma was fused with the Tao of fire. Both were extremely simple, yet they could derive endless mysteries of the great Tao. This was the convergence of the myriad of Taos, and only when one attained an inconceivable state on the boundless path towards the Tao could one attain such attainments in the Tao. Boom! The billions of flames trembled and followed a mysterious trajectory as they charged towards Lin Sun with overwhelming momentum. Lin Sun didn't dare to be negligent. He held his breath and concentrated as he fought with it. The mysterious God realm, in a dark world that seemed like chaos. On the branch, Black Crow suddenly exclaimed softly, and then with a bang, he transformed into a black-clothed young woman. Her snow-white hair fluttered down like a waterfall. She frowned, and her slender and white hands formed a strange seal. Immediately, strands of obscure and mysterious karma power surged out. Gradually, a blurry and illusory light screen appeared between her palms. On it, a fierce battle at the peak of Gale Mountain in Chi country of the mortal transformation world was displayed. But before the light screen could become clear, it suddenly collapsed and dissipated. The black-clothed young woman let out a muffled groan, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Her pair of enchanting red eyes instantly became cold and terrifying, and her aura showed signs of boiling. Little crow, you reap what you sow. Suddenly a laugh sounded out from the depths of the ground. In the ruins of Tao, you dare to pry into the changes with that little bit of cultivation of yours? The black-clothed young woman lowered her head and said, Sect leader, I just wanted to see how capable Lin Sun is now. Who would have thought? This is the ruins of Tao. You're just looking for trouble by doing this. Not to mention you. Even I can't forcefully deduce it. Otherwise, karma will be born, changes will occur, and killing tribulation will appear. A slight change will affect everything. Taichu's voice became gentle. You just stay here and wait to see how many changes that variable can cause in the end. With me here, why do you need to worry about anything else? But Ape Ancestor and the 9 divisions of Taichu are here. If they, the black-clothed young woman, couldn't help saying. But before she finished speaking, she was interrupted by Taichu. On the Great Way, everyone has his own way to go. Do you know why the 9 divisions of destiny Tao can't set foot in this realm? It's because they can't cut off their reliance on me. To them, I am their shackles. They already possess their current level of cultivation. So if they can't even see through this, then they can forget about taking another step forward in this lifetime. Speaking of this, Taichu's voice became gentle again. As for Ape Ancestor, you don't have to worry about him. He has already set foot in this realm and has the qualification to play in the ruins of Tao. The black-clothed young woman nodded, but there was a doubt in her heart that she couldn't say. Why Ape Ancestor could act in the outside world, but only she had to stay here. She didn't dare to ask. Little Crow, tell me about this. How many cosmic Tao can Lin Sun defeat? Suddenly, Taichu asked. This, the black-clothed young woman pondered. Take your time. Don't worry. Taichu said softly. Time went by. After a long time, the black-clothed young woman said, Hierarch, for my selfishness, I naturally don't want Lin Sun to defeat any Dharma Laksana. After all, in this case, it proves that he is too dangerous. It's dangerous? Taichu's voice suddenly became subtle. No, it's far from enough. The black-clothed young woman was stunned. At this moment, her heart trembled, and her face suddenly changed. She said, He defeated your Dharma Laksana? Taichu Path. The black-clothed young woman nodded bitterly. Yes. When you were in the mortal realm, you were already a boundless Tao Lord, only a step away from the realm of perfection. Inferring from this, Lin Sun's current cultivation should also be in this realm. Taichu said, but this is not enough. Since he is an unprecedented variable, he should have a different power. Then wait and see. Don't let me down. Hearing these words, the black-clothed young woman was stunned. Why did Hierarch want Lin Sun to be stronger? Lin Sun won. It was not easy, but it was not dangerous either. Unlike defeating Chun Linkong and Ape Ancestor, it did not take Lin Sun too much time to defeat Heya. This was because as soon as the battle began, it entered the most intense game, and Lin Sun could not hold back. After fighting for nearly 2 hours, Lin Sun, who was seriously injured, defeated his opponent in one fell swoop. At this moment, carefully recalling the previous battle and comparing it with Chun Linkong and Ape Ancestor, Lin Sun gradually understood why these 3 supreme existences were on par with each other. The reason was that even though their paths towards the Tao were different, the attainments they possessed all those years ago had encountered similar bottlenecks in this realm. And this bottleneck was the key to entering the boundless Tao realm. It seems that their cultivation at that time should be within the scope of the boundless Tao Lord, and all of them are only a step away from entering the boundless Tao realm. Lin Sun thought. He even faintly felt that Master of the Heart Core, Golden Cicada, and the others were in the same realm when they first arrived in the mortal realm. Otherwise, it would be impossible for 5 people to be on par with each other. However, Lin Sun was very clear that he was different from them. At the very least, his current cultivation should be considered to be at the boundless Tao realm middle perfection, and he had not yet entered the late stage, let alone the boundless Tao realm perfection. In this heavenly cycle Tao law, only absolute beginning, Chun Shi, and that swordsman's Tao Karma Dharma are absent. Could it be that after they arrived in the absolute beginning realm, their cultivation had already stepped into the boundless Tao realm perfection, so their Tao Karma cannot be reflected in this heavenly cycle Tao law? Or perhaps there's a character among them who is like me, and even if they defeat the Tao Karma Dharma that is ranked first, they still can't attract the Chaos Tao fruit. Thinking of this, Lin Sun's heart surged with complicated emotions. Up until now, he had not attracted the Chaos Tao fruit. This made Lin Sun a little nervous. After all, Xia Ji had always been waiting in the disaster realm. But there was also an indescribable kind of anticipation. If he could defeat the Tao Karma Dharma that his master left behind in this world, it should be barely considered as the pupil surpasses the master, right? Tonight's update, tomorrow's. Chapter 3250. In a mountain field, Lin Sun was meditating with his legs crossed. His body was enshrouded in Taoist rhyme, making him look like a deity or an immortal. After defeating Black Crow's Dharma form of Tao, he chose to settle down and cultivate. He was in no hurry to challenge the Tao karma left by his master, the master of the square inch and golden cicada, because Lin Sun noticed a problem. For example, when Chen Linkong, Ape Ancestor, and Black Crow were in the mortal transcendent realm, they had all reached the stage of myriad Taos converging into one. One leads to myriad Taos. But their cultivation still encountered a bottleneck at that time, unable to truly step into the level of grand completion boundless realm. Does this mean that the myriad of Taos converge into one, and the myriad of Taos are merely something that the boundless Tao Lord can control? On the other hand, if one wanted to step into the realm of perfection and become the boundless dominator, then what sort of breakthrough should one attain on the path towards a Tao? All techniques converge into one. A single Tao develops a myriad of Taos. They're all fusing the Taos of the world into a furnace, and this furnace is my own path towards the Tao. However, the Taos that are formed from it are similarly the Taos of the world. While meditating, Lin Sun was lost in thought. There's so many Tao in the world. Tracing back to their origin, they're all born in the primordial chaos. How did the origin of chaos create so many great Taos? Wait a moment. Creation. Suddenly, Lin Sun was shocked. The origin of chaos could create the great Tao that didn't exist in the world. Why couldn't practitioners master this kind of power of creation? If he was really able to accomplish this, then wouldn't he be able to create something from nothing in the Grand Tao? All Taos converged into one, transforming into the great Taos that already existed in the world. One evolution, myriad Taos, deducing the profound mysteries of the laws that had existed in this world for a long time. Anything that existed in the world could be refined and deduced. Can a world be created by oneself? It was like a thunderclap that tore through the chaos in Lin Sun's heart. At that instant, he seemed to have inadvertently torn apart the mist that covered his eyes, and he suddenly saw an inconceivably grand world. That world was filled with profundities that caused his heart to tremble, be excited, and even be perturbed. The creation of the great Tao, the creation of the power that does not exist in the world. This idea was really too bold. It seemed to touch the taboo of the ultimate mystery, which made Lin Sun excited and nervous. Is there really such a power of creation in this world? After a long time, Lin Sun calmed down a little bit. He began to deduce the eternal Tao. The path of the eternal Tao was divided into the exceeding law realm, the creation realm, and the boundless realm. As the name suggested, the so-called rule was the meaning of rules and regulations. Transcending the rules meant that after mastering and using the rules, one could transcend the rules of heaven and earth. This was the first level of the eternal Tao. The creation realm utilized the laws one grasped to possess the ability to create all things in the world, just like the Lord of creation. At this level, the more nomological powers one refined, the more powerful one's cultivation would be. This was the second level of the eternal Tao. If it was to create the great Tao that didn't exist in the world, it was undoubtedly similar to the profundities of the creation realm. But Lin Sun knew that there was an essential difference between the two. One was the creation of all things, the creation of all phenomena. One was to create a great Tao that had never existed in the world, just like the primordial chaos. Moreover, the power grasped by the creation realm came from the energy of the laws that one had refined. Only by refining more laws would one be able to realize the ability to create all things in the world. As for the great Tao of creation, it involved the secrets of the birth of the great Tao, and it involved the forbidden profundities of the quintessence of chaos. The two couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. The boundless realm was the final realm of the eternal Tao, and it was also the ultimate realm of the path of cultivation. Once one attained this realm, one could walk through numerous eras and realize great freedom and freedom in the true sense of the word. But even in the boundless realm, one absolutely couldn't be fearless and do as one pleased. Because outside the ruins of Tao, The precondition to survive the destruction of an era was to endure the blow of the Great Desolation Tribulation. In other words, putting aside the competition between cultivators, the only force in the world that could threaten a boundless realm figure was the Great Desolation Tribulation. But where exactly did this tribulation come from? No one knew. Even if it was a boundless realm figure in the world, no one had been able to unravel this mystery. As far as Lin Sun was concerned, if there was someone in the world who knew the answer, then it would definitely be the absolute beginning dominator. This person controlled the absolute beginning bell and could borrow the energy of the Great Desolation Tribulation, and he could even allow the mandate envoys under his command to borrow the energy of the Great Desolation Tribulation. This could already be considered a forbidden method. But why did the Great Desolation Tribulation exist? Why would this tribulation emerge during the change of an era? Why did this tribulation only target boundless realm figures? In the past, Lin Sun had thought of these questions as well, but he'd always been unable to find an answer. Yet now, when he realized the thought of creating a grand Tao, like the Chaos Quintessence did, a bold thought arose in his mind. Could it be that the existence of the Great Desolation Tribulation was to prevent someone from trying to possess the energy to create a grand Tao, like the Chaos Quintessence? When he thought up to here, Lin Sun went silent, and his heart was unable to calm down for a long time. I presume the sovereign of absolute beginning is even clearer about the answer. Or perhaps Senior Chen Shi and that swordsman are probably aware of some clues. After all, figures like them have probably come to the ruins of Tao for the sake of this secret. Not to mention that according to rumor, the ruins of Tao contain the opportunity and fortune that can allow one to realize transcendence on the ultimate path towards the Tao. After a long while, Lin Sun finally sorted out some clues. Firstly, the path towards the Tao of all techniques converge into one was a force that only the boundless Tao Lord could grasp. For example, Chun Linkong, the ape ancestor and Black Crow in the mortal transformation world all those years ago, were at this realm. Secondly, if one wanted to break through the barrier of the boundless Tao Lord and step into the perfection stage of the boundless realm to become the boundless dominator, then one had to realize a further improvement on the path towards the Tao. In other words, one had to realize a breakthrough on the path towards the Tao of all techniques converge into one. Thirdly, if one wanted to prove whether the path of creating a grand Tao that had never existed in the world really existed, then perhaps one would be able to find the answer by seeking the Chaos Quintessence in the ruins of Tao. After all, the Chaos Tao fruit was the Chaos Quintessence that was born in the ruins of Tao. On the other hand, the Chaos Tao fruit was a complete innate rule energy. According to rumor, it was the opportunity that could allow a boundless realm expert to realize the ultimate path towards transcendence. Finally, the source of the Great Desolation Tribulation should be related to the secrets of the Chaos Quintessence in the ruins of Tao. Moreover, one should be able to find the answer in the ruins of Tao. After he straightened out all these clues, Lin Sun instantly felt as if he'd seen the sun after dispelling the clouds. He knew that so long as he continued searching along these clues, then perhaps he would be able to find out the ultimate secrets that were like taboos. And during this process of searching, his path towards the Tao would definitely undergo a transformation. The mountains and fields were boundless, and all was silent. Lin Sun sat on the ground and immersed himself in cultivation. Gradually, his aura changed, and a marvelous and extraordinary path towards the Tao emerged. It was like a starry sky was changing around him, and then a myriad of stars, numerous rivers of stars, and endless whirlpools of stars appeared. After that, a completely new path towards the Tao appeared. The world withered, the heavens collapsed, and everything turned into nothingness. Everything perished in destruction, and scenes of doomsday appeared. Later on, boundless Buddhist lands were born. Wonderful lotuses floated in all directions. The chanting of Sanskrit surged like a tide, and boundless light appeared everywhere. It was a state of extreme happiness of the great Tao. In the end, the 9 clear heavens were condensed, and it displayed the image of Qing Su, the scene of Tai Chong, and the interest of all changes in nature. These supreme paths of the Tao were respectively taken by the four patriarchs of the ancestral courts, Yuan Shu, Tianwu, Shi, and Xuyin. Now, all of them were developed by Lin Sun with the power of nirvana, and they revealed their profundities. Time flew by. A month had passed in a flash. On this day, Lin Sun's momentum suddenly changed, and a stream of clear and turbid air emerged. It intertwined and cycled, turning into yin and yang, and formed a tai chi. That momentum was actually the power of the Tao belonging to Ape Ancestor. But in less than an hour, the power derived from Lin Sun's body suddenly stagnated, and then suddenly collapsed and disappeared. At the same time, Lin Sun groaned and woke up from deep meditation. The mystery of the Tao can't be deduced by me. It seems that my own cultivation is not enough. Otherwise, it won't be like this. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. It was one thing to defeat the Tao karma left by Ape Ancestor, but it was extremely difficult to derive the mystery of Ape Ancestor's Tao one by one. At the bottom of it all, it was because the Tao karma left behind by the Ape Ancestor all those years ago was already at the level of the immeasurable Tao Lord. All Taos converged into one, and it was extremely difficult for others to see through its quintessence profundities. With Lin Sun's current cultivation, it was difficult for him to derive all the mysteries of the Tao. Well, let's go and see the power of Senior Golden Cicada's Tao karma. Lin Sun stood up and left the mountains. Yonghua, Maple Fairy. The fiery red maple forest was rooted at the bank of a large river, and numerous red leaves floated down onto the surface of the river, seeming as if numerous blazing flames were rippling in the river. Over Maple Fairy, there was an auspicious cloud, and a golden cicada was lying on it, looking up at the sky. Standing over the fiery maple forest, Lin Sun's moon-white clothes were fluttering in the river wind, making him look like an otherworldly immortal. Golden Cicada was looking at the sky, and Lin Sun was looking at Golden Cicada. In the vicinity of Maple Leaf Fairy, there were many ordinary people hurrying on their way, waiting for the ships to dock. Further away, there were many figures of Almighties. Every powerful figure stood very far away. When they looked at Lin Sun, there was all lingering on their faces. 3 of the 5 Tao karma that ranked first among the Tao laws of heaven had been defeated by Lin Sun. Now, Lin Sun was about to compete with Golden Cicada's Tao karma. Suddenly, a fiery red maple leaf rose with the wind and fell into the green river. Lin Sun also moved at this moment. He cupped his hands and said softly, "Senior, please enlighten me." Under the sky, above the auspicious cloud, a cicada suddenly sounded. At first, it was so subtle that it could not be heard. Then it resounded through the clouds, the earth, and the mountains and rivers in the world. The hearts of the great powers that had been hiding extremely far away since a long time ago shook fiercely, and they seemed to see a cicada flapping its wings as it flew over from the eternal river of time that was changing eras. Chapter 32:51. Over the Maple Leaf Fairy, cicadas chirped loudly. The hearts of the distant spectators roiled while they revealed dazed expressions, and their thoughts were impacted. It was as if they'd fallen into a strange and dazzling dream. The dream was so real that they seemed to have returned to the beginning of their pursuit of Tao. Scenes of joys and sorrows, as well as endless bitterness, Lin Sun's state of mind was also rippling, but he soon calmed down. When he looked again, a barefooted, handsome young man in linen was already standing under the auspicious clouds. His eyes were gentle and clear, without any momentum at all. Suddenly, he smiled, stretched out a finger, and drew in the void. Boom! Heaven and earth split, and everything changed suddenly. Lin Sun suddenly found that he appeared on a broken road. One step forward was the abyss, and one step backward was endless darkness. Apart from this, there was nothing else. As for his own cultivation, it was as if all of his cultivation had disappeared. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. The abyss and the darkness, one virtual and one real, life and death. Which is virtual and which is real? It's up to you to choose. A gentle and calm voice sounded. Lin Sun was silent. The coexistence of illusion and reality, the coexistence of life and death. Is this the path of Tao that Senior Golden Cicada has mastered? He looked up at the abyss, which was so deep that it seemed to swallow people's souls. Looking back, the darkness was like fog, which was so mysterious that it made people's hearts palpitate. Crack! Crack! The broken road under his feet suddenly cracked, spreading like a spider web. If it went on like this, the broken road would collapse completely. At that time, he would fall into the abyss. The black fog behind him was also wriggling, pressing forward little by little. He was in a dilemma. The most terrible thing was that Lin Sun couldn't use his cultivation. It seemed that he could only choose to step into the abyss on the road ahead or be swallowed by the black fog on the road behind him. Among them, there were virtual and real, life and death. The situation was extremely dangerous. If it were others, they would think that only by seeing through the abyss and the black fog, which was real and which was fake, could they resolve the danger. They would even think that this was an invisible contest of Tao. If they couldn't see through the virtual and real, they would lose. For a moment, Lin Sun almost thought so. But just as he was about to make a decision, he abruptly stopped this impulse. After his expression changed, he suddenly laughed. The abyss and the black mist, the illusory and the real, life and death, all of these were obstacles to one's heart. Once one fell into a trap, no matter what choice one made, it would all lead to a loss. It was like a cow being led by the nose. It should struggle to break free, so how could it follow the other party? As for his cultivation, he could not sense it at all. This was the real illusion. Bang! The broken path under his feet suddenly broke, and the black fog behind him had already enveloped him. Lin Sun shouted in his heart, "Open!" Boom! All phenomena changed, and the black fog and the abyss disappeared like bubbles. When Lin's vision recovered, a finger was already close to him like the silent sword Qi. This finger came from the golden cicada. But at this critical moment, it was blocked by Lin Sun's palm. Bang! The finger force and palm force collided, producing an earth-shattering rumble. A rain of light splashed everywhere. Lin couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. If he had been a little slower to wake up before, he would have been killed in this battle. Thinking about the scene just now, it was really terrible. Unconsciously, he had fallen into the illusion of mind, which was the so-called appearance, so that he fell into the killing tribulation of the abyss and the black mist. Was all this an illusion? Yes and no. Because whether it was an illusion or a reality, it was a killing tribulation. And this killing tribulation came with the finger of the golden cicada. In other words, it was the power of the great way contained in the finger force of the golden cicada that affected Lin's state of mind silently before. It could be imagined how terrifying the Tao of the golden cicada was. Illusory and real coexisted, and life and death turned the killing tribulation between existence and non-existence. In the splashing of the light rain, the figure of the golden cicada also dissipated like bubbles and could not be found anymore. In front of the ferry, many ordinary people were still waiting, and those powerful figures in the distance were still in a trance. Under the sky, above the auspicious cloud, except for a missing golden cicada, everything seemed to be the same as before. But Lin was keenly aware that something was wrong. The Tao of the golden cicada was not defeated, but seemed to disappear from this world, and no trace of it could be sensed. The formless is invisible. The present is real, and the golden cicada is illusory. Lin raised his eyebrows. This was not the method of breath concealment and invisibility, but a supreme means of the great way. Not to mention the naked eye, even the divine awareness couldn't sense it. Time passed little by little, but the golden cicada never appeared. But Lin's expression became more and more serious. The enemy was in the dark while he was in the light. There would undoubtedly be too many variables in such a battle. The golden cicada was illusory, as if it had turned into the nothingness of the great way. In contrast, he, who was exposed to the world, was existence. Nothing against existence, emptiness against reality, darkness against light. It It was the first time that Lin had encountered such a battle, and the invisible pressure was undoubtedly the most terrible. Suddenly, Lin took a deep breath, closed his eyes, restrained the spreading divine awareness, and stood there silently. His state of mind was as clear and ethereal as an ancient well, without any ripples. His heart was like an ancient well, but it could reflect the shadow of the empty moon. Then, in Lin's state of mind, a figure appeared, standing on his side, with 5 fingers folded into a seal and held in the air. But it seemed that the figure didn't know where to start, so he stayed there for a long time. This figure was none other than the golden cicada. It turns out that he has been by my side all the time, waiting for the slightest flaw in my state of mind and chi, and then he would take the opportunity to raise his fist. Lin's state of mind rippled. He was surprised and suddenly realized, and his back was covered with cold sweat. This kind of formless way of illusory and real was undoubtedly too incredible. Boom! At the moment when Lin's state of mind rippled, the raised fist of the golden cicada had already smashed towards him like a long-awaited thunderbolt. But Lin had already captured his figure. How could he not react? Almost at the first time, he also raised his fist and punched. Boom! The collision of the two shocked the universe. It also awakened the group of powerful figures in the distance who were in a trance, as if falling into a dream. They screamed one by one and looked at each other in horror. For existences like them, the ordinary Tao of illusion was unable to shake their minds since a long time ago. However, the golden cicada's Tao karma actually shook their minds with a single cicada cry, and it made them feel as if they'd fallen into a nightmare. Just what kind of terrifying cultivation did he have to be able to do this? In the distance, the battle was taking place. Gradually, it attracted the attention of those powerful figures. However, to their horror, this battle seemed to be extremely strange. The figure of golden cicada would disappear without a trace every time, but Lin Sun's eyes were closed, and even his spiritual awareness was withdrawn. But every time, golden cicada would disappear. But every time, he seemed to be able to catch the trace of the golden cicada and force the golden cicada to show up again and again. Everyone was flabbergasted by what they were seeing. For a long time. Boom! After the figure of the golden cicada was forced to show up again, it suddenly shook its head with a smile and disappeared completely. Lin opened his eyes and bowed to the void. "Senior, thank you for letting me win." He went just like that. Many of the powerful figures were stunned. There were also people who were trembling in their hearts. Such a battle didn't seem very exciting, but the invisible murderous intent that pervaded the air could be said to be everywhere. If it were them, they probably wouldn't be able to find the golden cicada's trace at all. If that was the case, how could there be a battle? But Lin Sun won. Lin Sun had indeed won. The heavenly cycle Tao law had lost another Tao law power. This was clearly noticed by the powerful figures present through the Tao Karma Jade archives. However, the Chaos Tao fruit that belonged to Lin Sun still hadn't appeared. This made people feel even more shocked and puzzled. It's already come to this, so how can it still be like this? If the Chaos Tao fruit still didn't appear when a Master of the Core Realm defeated the Tao Karma left by the Master of the Core Realm, wouldn't it mean that Lin Sun wouldn't be able to leave the mortal transformation? Hidden World, Profound God Domain. Golden Cicada, who was playing chess, had just picked up a chess piece when he suddenly stopped, and then a strange look appeared on his face. "You can't make a move. Are you going to admit defeat?" The Master of the Core Realm asked with a smile. Golden Cicada slowly returned the chess piece in his hand, and then he chuckled. "I'm willing to admit defeat in this game. I didn't expect little friend Lin's state of mind to have reached such a level. Even my Tao of void and reality can't make things difficult for him." His words were filled with gratification. The Master of the Core Realm came to a sudden realization. It has only been 7 months since he entered the mortal transformation, and he has already defeated the Tao Karma Dharma you left behind. He knew how profound Golden Cicada's Tao path was. It could be said that it was one of the most difficult Tao paths in the ruins of Tao. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun was able to defeat the Tao Karma Dharma left behind by Golden Cicada. It had to be said that this surprised the master of the core realm. Golden Cicada laughed heartily. Fellow Taoist, there's a hint of complacency in your words. It seems that you're very happy in your heart. The master of the core realm couldn't help but smile. He thought for a moment and said, "In the future, I'm afraid I won't dare to be his teacher. But the more it is like this, the more gratified I am. I can't wait for my disciples to surpass me." Golden Cicada pondered and said, "Fellow Taoist, I can understand your feelings. Now I'm a little worried about little friend Lin. Are you worried that his performance as a variable is too eye-catching and will provoke an unexpected calamity?" "Exactly. There's no need to worry. Tai Chu hasn't made a move yet. As long as he doesn't move, there's nothing to worry about." "I hope so." Speaking of this, Golden Cicada suddenly said, "Next, little friend Lin will definitely challenge the Tao Karma Dharma you left behind. It will be difficult for him." The master of the core realm said casually, "The Tao Karma I left behind is impossible for others to win. But for Lin Sun, it is very easy for him to win. There's something special about it." Golden Cicada was surprised. The master of the core realm couldn't help but laugh. "As a teacher, will I make things difficult for my disciple? As for the special, when you see him in the future, you can ask him." Golden Cicada was startled. He said thoughtfully, "Then I'll really wait and see." There are more updates at night. Chapter 3252, Maple Leaf Fairy. When the powerful figures recovered from their shock, they realized that Lin Sun had already left. Does everyone still remember how the absolute beginning ruler left the mortal, transcendent realm? Suddenly, someone spoke. Rumor has it that when the absolute beginning ruler arrived in the mortal transformation, there are only a few dozen types of karma in the heavenly cycle Tao law. The absolute beginning ruler fought against them one by one and won them all with ease. At that time, the Tao fruit of chaos didn't appear either. As a result, the absolute beginning ruler was trapped in the mortal transformation for 100 years. Later, it was said that the absolute beginning ruler comprehended the ultimate secret of the heavenly cycle Tao law. With one step, the heavenly gate opened, and he left the mortal transformation. Someone said, "That's just a legend. No one knows if it's true." Don't forget that the absolute beginning ruler's Tao manifestation wasn't included in the heavenly cycle Tao law. If he didn't comprehend the ultimate secret of the heavenly cycle Tao law, how could he have done that? There's no need to argue over this. Don't you think that Lin Sun's current situation is similar to the absolute beginning ruler's? The surroundings instantly became much quieter, and many people's expressions changed indeterminately. Comparing Lin Sun to the absolute beginning ruler? Since ancient times until now, the absolute beginning sovereign has been viewed as one of the first batch of existences to step into the great circle of the boundless realm. It's already been countless eras since he's proven his Tao, and there's practically no one in the ruins of Tao that can compare to him. That's not necessarily true. For example, didn't that swordsman use his own Tao to form sword chains to bind the absolute beginning ruler until now? Everyone, Lin Sun naturally can't compare to the absolute beginning ruler now. But now, Lin Sun already has a foundation comparable to that of the primordial dominator. As soon as these words came out, the entire hall quieted down again. Indeed, Lin Sun's current foundation and accomplishments were enough to compare to the absolute beginning ruler in the mortal transformation. This was an indisputable fact that no one could refute. After a long time, someone said softly, "Let's see who's stronger between Lin Sun and his master, the master of the heart dimension." If Lin Sun wins and the Tao fruit of chaos doesn't appear, then Lin Sun will be in the same situation as the absolute beginning ruler. Similarly, if Lin Sun loses, there's no point in talking about it. Between heaven and earth, Lin Sun rode the wind and walked among the boundless mountains and rivers. After the battle with the golden cicada, a feeling of comprehension that couldn't be restrained suddenly arose in his heart. It was as if he'd broken through a layer of barrier, causing his entire body to have a change of overflowing when the cup is full. This made Lin Sun realize that his cultivation broke through again. It should be on the Tao path of stepping into the late-stage boundless realm from middle-stage grand completion boundless realm in one stroke. At this moment, he strolled through the heavens and the earth without restraint, and he experienced the various changes in his cultivation, causing him to feel an indescribable feeling of delight and carefree. It just happened to be like a torrent that surged out from a breached dam, and it also seemed like a timely rain that crashed down from the nine heavens. The transformation in one's cultivation was simply the greatest enjoyment on the path of cultivation. Day after day, Lin Sun's figure never stopped. He stepped on mountains and rivers, skimmed over the endless rivers and mountains, and witnessed all the things in the world half a month later. Lin Sun suddenly stopped. In the distance, there appeared a magnificent blue sea between heaven and earth. Above the blue sea, seagulls gathered, and schools of fish occasionally leaped out of the sea, creating waves. In the sky above one of the sea regions, there was a stone tablet floating. The stone tablet was engraved with the pattern of a slanting moon and 3 stars. When Lin Sun arrived, there were already innumerable powerful figures gathered around the blue sea. It was as if all the powerful figures in a mortal transformation realm had come together, and their figures could be seen everywhere. This battle had undoubtedly attracted the attention of the world. After all, Lin Sun had been fighting for 9 months, and he had won every battle. Right now, on the heavenly cycle Tao law, there was only a karmic Tao characteristic that he could face. Moreover, this karmic Tao characteristic was closely related to Lin Sun. If Lin Sun were to lose, all his previous victories would be for naught. But if he were to win to the entire mortal transformation realm, it would be no less than an event that would be passed down through the ages. Lin Sun also noticed this scene. He even caught sight of the figures of traversing Sword Gorge, Fu Nanli, and other old friends. After nodding to them from afar, Lin Sun headed straight for the stone tablet above the rippling blue sea. Along the way, he attracted the attention of countless people. The slanting moon and 3 stars are the heart, and so is the heart. Master, I've long known that the foundation of our Fangsun mountain is the state of mind. Stopping before the stone tablet, Lin Sun murmured in his heart, and you once told my senior brothers and sisters that a disciple need not be inferior to a master. Today, I've come to ask for some guidance from the karmic Tao characteristic you left behind. He cupped his hand from afar and bowed. The stone tablet buzzed and turned into a tall and thin figure that seemed to sit high above the 9 heavens. His hair was snow white, and he had the air of a sage, the charm of a Confucian, and the aura of a demon. However, he was neither a Taoist nor a Confucian, nor a Buddhist, nor a demon. His aura was extremely profound and indescribable. This figure was naturally the karmic Tao characteristic left behind by the master of the Fangsun mountain. When it appeared, all the powerful figures in the nearby territories sensed it. It was as if they had seen the master of all Taos, the Lord of the heavens, and they felt a sense of reverence and respect from the bottom of their hearts. It was a shapeless, imposing aura that caused others to be unable to arouse any thoughts of disrespect, or go against it. Lin Sun sensed this imposing aura that assaulted his face as well. Even if Lin Sun had seen the karmic Tao characteristic left behind by his master, the master of the heart, on more than one occasion a very long time ago, it was like the difference between the clouds and the mud when compared to the karmic Tao characteristic that stood before him. Suddenly, the master of the heart attacked, and he casually slapped his palm forward. Bang! When this palm appeared, all the spectating great figures in the surroundings felt as if their mental states had been heavily injured. In their days, they felt as if they transformed into tiny ants, and that enormous palm blotted out the sky as it smashed down towards them. All of them only had a single thought in their minds. This palm is like the boundless heaven Tao that's pressing down, and it's utterly impossible to resist. A strand of indescribable despair started to grow madly in their hearts. Right when they were on the verge of being unable to hold on any longer, a clear and indifferent voice of the Tao suddenly resounded. Bang! All of those great figures felt their vision go black, and their mental states that were on the verge of being unable to hold on suddenly struggled free from their despair and helplessness. Even so, they still suffered from the backlash. Many of their faces paled, and they staggered, almost falling from the void. All of them could not help but be overwhelmed with shock. What a terrifying palm force! It directly affected their mental states. Even if they were watching from afar, these boundless realm existences could not withstand it. If it were to directly attack them, the consequences would be unimaginable. When they looked into the distance again, Lin Sun was already engaged in battle with the Master of the Heart. The Master of the Heart's combat technique was unusually simple. He kept swinging his palm and slapping it down again and again. His movements were light and casual, and there was no trace of the great Tao to speak of. But every time he slapped his palm, it directly impacted the minds of the spectators. It was inconceivable. The state of mind was an extremely mysterious and ethereal power, but at this moment, it could not escape the bombardment of the Master of the Heart's palm force. Puffed. Some spectators coughed up blood, turned around, and left, not daring to take another look. The other spectators also felt extremely uncomfortable. They were only watching from afar, but they were still affected by the shock waves. Their minds felt as if they were constantly being bombarded by a heavy hammer. Gradually, more and more spectators chose to leave. Some tried to forcefully hold on, but in just a few breaths of time, they coughed up blood and screamed loudly. Their minds were on the verge of collapse, and they did not dare stay any longer and retreated in panic. In merely a short moment, there was actually not a single spectator left on the blue sea. Boom, boom, boom. Lin Sun felt like his mind was like a cauldron. As the Master of the Heart's palm force slashed down, the walls of the cauldron rumbled and trembled violently, and he felt as if his mind was on the verge of collapse. This was an extremely mysterious blow to the state of mind, and it was completely different from the other great Taos. In the beginning, Lin Sun was still able to resist, but gradually, he was only able to protect himself. I never expected Lin Sun to have grasped the power of the state of mind to such an inconceivable extent. With his level of attainment, how could he only be ranked first in the heavenly cycle Tao laws? The pressure on Lin Sun multiplied, and he was extremely puzzled. Golden Cicada's formless Tao of void and reality was already mysterious and unique enough. Who would have thought that his master state of mind was even more tyrannical? In comparison, the Tao karmas left behind by Ancestor Ape, Black Crow, and Chinlin Kong were obviously easier to resist. Boom! The blows on the cauldron of the state of mind became more and more ferocious, and Lin Sun dared not to let his imagination run wild. He abandoned all distracting thoughts, concentrated all his energy in the place of the state of mind, and ran all his attainments. At the same time, Lin Sun subconsciously ran the fighting saint method of the 9 great inheritances of the heart of mind. It was also at this moment that something unbelievable happened. The cauldron-like state of mind seemed to be on fire and suddenly surged with unparalleled fighting intent, which made the state of mind become stable. When the palm force of the master of the heart of mind hit the cauldron, although it still made the cauldron of the state of mind suffer a terrible impact, it was not so difficult to bear. This made Lin Sun feel refreshed. Sure enough, the 9 great inheritances of the heart of mind were created by his master, and he had already integrated the 9 scriptures into his body a long time ago. It was just that he had never encountered a battle of the state of mind before, so he suffered a sudden impact. Thinking of this, Lin Sun ran other inheritances at the same time, such as the Primeval Heart Sutra, the Floating Sutra, the Close Distance Sutra, the Unfettered Sutra, the Carefree Travel Sutra, the Unbounded Voyager, the Knowledge Sutra, and the Confinement of the Heart of Mind. Each inheritance included all kinds of phenomena, but traced back to the source, they were all inextricably linked to the power of the state of mind. At this moment, as Lin Sun ran the inheritance, his state of mind also showed various wonderful visions. Not only was it completely stabilized, but it also gave birth to many insights that it had never experienced before. The most amazing thing was that when the palm force of the master of the heart of mind hit him again, Lin Sun not only didn't feel any impact, but also produced a strange rhythm like resonance. It was like the state of mind was a piece of stubborn iron, which was being hammered again and again to remove the impurities. This could be a good fortune left by my master. At this moment, a thought came to Lin Sun's mind uncontrollably. Here are the updates. There were two things I wanted to say. First, I would definitely finish the book this month if there were no accidents. I have a lot of things I want to say, but after thinking about it, I think it's more important to do my best to finish the book. I'll write some random thoughts and feelings on my WeChat account when I have the time. Second, beginning of the month. Goldfish, please vote for a guaranteed monthly ticket. Thank you. Chapter 3253. Above the blue sea, Lin Sun's tall figure was enshrouded in the dazzling light, and he stood still. But a wonderful change was taking place in his state of mind. His state of mind was like a furnace. As he circulated the 9 inheritances of the core world, the attack from the owner of the core world transformed into a miraculous tempering force, causing his state of mind to seem like a sword that had been tempered thousands of times, and it started to emit a peerlessly fierce light bit by bit. Along with the ceaseless tempering of his state of mind, in the end, a wisp of sharpness in his state of mind seemed to have broken through an invisible shackle, and along with the profundities of the scripture of the core world, an incredible aura surged out. Sometimes it swayed above the universe and galloped between all phenomena. That was the ultimate profundity recorded in the floating game scripture. The light of mind is like a shuttle, and it floats through all phenomena. Sometimes it walked freely in the mortal world and transcended the ups and downs of the world. This was the profundity of the wandering game scripture. When one's state of mind reached this point, one could ride on the righteousness of the heavens and the earth, resist the discrimination of the six chi, and roam boundlessly. Sometimes it saw through the mysteries of the world and discerned the essence of all Taos. Sometimes it transformed into mountains, rivers, plants, trees, the sun, the moon, the stars, the living beings in the world, and experienced different vitality of life. This was the freedom transformation scripture, and it could transform all phenomena of the world, all things in the world, and the changes of the ages. Sometimes, in the end, the wisp of sharpness that was born in the state of mind seemed to have broken through the barriers of the ages and traveled through the changes of the ages. It was unrestrained, and without any worries. It was a true feeling of great freedom and freedom. It seemed as if a single thought could reach through the ages and see through all the mysteries of the world since ancient times. After an unknown period of time, Lin Sun opened his eyes quietly. When he looked at the owner of the core world in the distance, its figure was gradually dissipating. "Thank you, Master, for helping me break through the barrier of my heart." Lin Sun bowed. This state of mind could travel through the ages, and this state of mind could reach through the ages. This was the Tao of the core world. After experiencing this battle, Lin Sun's state of mind seemed as if it had completely broken through a threshold, and he had completely realized great freedom in the boundless realm. The wonderful transformation that came from the state of mind caused Lin Sun's aura to undergo an inconceivable change. Although he was standing in the void, he seemed as if he was standing above the boundless ages. However, upon closer inspection, he seemed to be everything in this world, natural and omnipresent. It could be a tiny speck of dust, or it could be a beautiful palace in the sky, or it could be a speck of dust that could suppress the ages. Far away from the Jade Sea, the mighty cultivators who had avoided the battle earlier sensed the disappearance of the Master of the Heart's Tao aura from the Tao Karma Jade archive. This change caused all of them to be shocked. There was no doubt that Lin Sun had won this battle of the Tao. As a disciple, he defeated the Tao Karma left behind by his master all those years ago. This is truly shocking. Some mighty figures sighed with emotion. Before they came to the ruins of Tao, each of them had their own successors, and most of them were even the founders of their own sections. But very few of them could possess such an unworldly cultivation path like Lin Sun. The Master of the Heart's strength was extraordinarily profound and terrifying. Every single move he made struck directly at one's state of mind, and it was utterly impossible to guard against or avoid. It could be said to be the most mysterious and supreme Grand Tao in the world. But even then, Lin Sun still defeated him. Does this mean that Lin Sun's state of mind is already formidable to an inconceivable extent? It must be so. Wait, the chaotic Tao fruit that belongs to Lin Sun still hasn't appeared. This isn't as simple as defeating the Master of the Heart's Tao Karma Jade images. After this battle, Lin Sun can already compare to the primordial dominator from all those years ago. The surroundings were stirred, and all the mighty figures were unable to maintain their composure. Those 5 Tao Karma Jade images that were comparable to the first in the universe had been defeated by Lin Sun one by one, but the chaotic Tao fruit still hadn't appeared. This was undoubtedly inconceivable. According to rumor, the primordial dominator was trapped here for 100 years, and then he saw through the profundities of the universe and opened the heaven door with a single step. Will Lin Sun be able to accomplish such a miracle? Someone spoke softly. Everyone looked at each other, and then they couldn't help but move towards the blue sea. When they arrived, they couldn't help but look up subconsciously. They saw Lin Sun's figure rising high up in the sky, as if he was about to break through the sky. What is he doing? Everyone was puzzled. Hidden world, profound God territory. The Master of the Heart suddenly waved his sleeve, and the chessboard in front of him tipped over, and the chess pieces fell like rain. Then he stood up, and his entire body seemed to relax. He smiled. The game is over. Next, we'll wait for the final battle. Golden Cicada was stunned at first, and then he smiled and stood up. It seems that young friend Lin already has the foundation to break the game. It's still early, but as you said, the foundation is already there. Just like the primordial dominator, Chun Linkong, and that swordsman. The Master of the Heart's eyes were deep and profound. Golden Cicada thought for a moment, and then said, "All right, primordial spirit world." A burst of hearty laughter suddenly came from the thatched hut. What a good Master of the Heart Mountain. He actually left behind a wonderful move in the Tao Karma aspect. Not far from the thatched hut, Chun Linkong, who was sitting on the ground, shuddered. "Grandfather, what do you mean? A long time ago, weren't you curious about why the Master of the Heart Mountain only left behind a Tao Karma aspect in the mortal transcendent realm, the number 1 Tao law of the universe?" The voice from the thatched hut said. Chun Linkong nodded. "Yes, in my opinion, the Master of the Heart Mountain's Tao Karma is already above the Tao law of the universe. At first, I also thought that he was hiding his strength, but now, I know that he did it to fulfill his little disciple's wish." The voice within the thatched cottage sighed with emotion. As a master, he was actually willing to give up an even greater chaotic Tao fruit in order to complete his disciple's path of cultivation. Even I have no choice but to sigh with admiration at such courage. So, like grandfather, the Master of the Heart Mountain was able to cross the Tao law of the universe and absorb the essence of chaos in the mortal transcendent realm. Chun Linkong couldn't help but show a touch of surprise. If so, he paid a great price. Without his sacrifice, how could he wait for Lin Sun's transformation today? This is a wonderful move. It's really amazing. Grandfather, in this case, what kind of Tao fruit of chaos will Lin Sun have? It's impossible to estimate. Hearing such a reply, Chun Linkong was completely stunned. Could it be greater than the Tao fruit of chaos obtained by grandfather? In that chaotic world, the girl in black suddenly felt her heart palpitate, and then a violent sound of chains colliding suddenly resounded between heaven and earth. The hierarch, "Ha, Bodhi, you are really generous." The laughter of the absolute beginning sovereign sounded from the depths of the earth, and the sound of chains colliding naturally spread from him. After a long while, the laughter gradually subsided. The primordium sovereign sighed. "Things are getting more and more interesting. I thought that you, Subhoodie, wanted to use your disciple as a variable to fight with me. Who would have thought that you'd give up long ago? But that's even better. I can't be happier with this variable. The girl in black trembled. She could feel that the hierarch's chi fluctuated greatly, and the invisible power made her feel suffocated. But she couldn't tell whether the hierarch was happy or angry, or both. At this time, Lin Sun was already standing at the highest point of the sky. In Shun Shi's field of vision, this was an expanse of nothingness that seemed like chaos. It was boundless and completely empty. Even his divine senses couldn't sense anything. But in Lin Sun's mind, scenes appeared one after another. A tall swordsman stood in the light and shadow of reincarnation with his sleeves fluttering like a supreme god. A boundless sea of swords appeared in front of him. The sea of swords surged, and countless torrents of sword intent gushed into the depths of the light and shadow of reincarnation behind him. At another place, a man in green clothes that seemed like jade and carried an ancient sword on his back walked above the river of chaos like an overlord. Every single step he took caused a profound and unfathomable divine talisman diagram to appear beneath his feet. Further away, there was a man in a black robe who was neatly dressed, and his body was sprinkled with crystal-clear, divine chains of calamity. There were so many of them that they were as numerous as the grains of sand in the Ganges River. But he himself was invulnerable to all calamities and was transcendent. Three figures reflected three kinds of supreme demeanors. When Lin Sun sensed all this, he couldn't help but feel ripples in his mind. He had realized that these were three existences above the Tao of Zhou. The reason why they didn't leave their names in the Tao of Zhou was that the Tao of Zhou couldn't bear their karma at all. Yet now, he, Lin Sun, had become the fourth cultivator in history to surpass the Tao of Zhou. When he realized this, an indescribable feeling of warmth suddenly surged in Lin Sun's heart. He knew that it was his master who had helped him achieve this. If it wasn't for his master's karma that tempered his state of mind to the point of being able to see through the ages, it would be absolutely impossible for him to possess such a path in the Tao in such a short period of time. After a short while, Lin Sun took a deep breath and discarded all distracting thoughts. Rise! In the next moment, his figure emanated boundless light like the rising sun, and it illuminated the boundless chaotic sky. Bang! The entire mortal transformation shook abruptly. The almighty figures that were distributed in various areas of the world seemed to have sensed something, and they looked up into the sky in unison. They saw a wisp of mysterious light appear in the sky that covered the Tao of Zhou, and it was like a dominator that surpassed the Tao of Zhou and emitted supreme might. Countless people were dumbstruck. Another path of the Tao that surpasses the laws of the universe has appeared in this world. It's Lin Sun. It must be him. This scene was like the sudden appearance of a storm, and it wreaked havoc in the hearts of all the almighty figures. They couldn't help but be in a trance. It had only been 10 months since Lin Sun entered the mortal transformation, but he had already created an unparalleled miracle in the struggle for the Tao. And at this moment, they were all witnessing all of this. Chapter 32:54. In the sky. Along with Lin Sun releasing the limits of his cultivation, a mysterious quintessence energy surged into appearance, and it was like a dazzling rain of light that bathed Lin Sun's figure within it. Immediately, Lin Sun felt that it was the fruit of chaos. The so-called chaotic Tao fruit was born from a strand of the innate laws of chaos in the ruins of Tao, and it was indescribably profound. The more they refined, the more powerful their cultivation in the boundless realm, and the more hope they had to realize the ultimate transcendence in this realm. However, Lin Sun soon noticed that his chaos Tao fruit was a little different, because the chaotic Tao fruit didn't contain the laws of chaos, and it was a strand of the quintessence energy of chaos that truly belonged to the ruins of Tao. Why was the primal chaos Tao fruit called a Tao fruit? The reason was that these natural laws were born from the quintessence of chaos, and they were like fruits that had been born from it. But now, what Lin Sun absorbed was not the fruit, but the source of the fruit. When he realized this, it was simply earth-shattering and made Lin's state of mind shocked. The quintessence of chaos in the ruins of Tao is capable of giving birth to a chaotic Tao fruit, and it's no different from creating a grand Tao. Now that I'm able to refine and absorb such a quintessence of chaos, doesn't it mean that so long as I refine and absorb its profundities, I'll be able to create a chaotic Tao fruit like this? Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't stay calm. Not long ago, he'd once pondered about the path of creating a Tao that had never existed in the world, and he felt that he only had to seek the quintessence energy of the ruins of Tao before he might be able to find the answer and verify if such a path of the Tao could work. And now, the origin energy of chaos that he had attracted might very well prove this point. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun calmed down. He sat down cross-legged and started to meditate and comprehend the quintessence energy of chaos that surged ceaselessly into his body. Gradually, numerous indescribably profound comprehensions surged into his heart. These insights were all related to the origin of the rule of chaos, which was extremely obscure. With Lin Sun's current understanding, although he could understand them, it was difficult for him to digest them in a short time. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. The origin of chaos was completely refined by Lin Sun. When Lin Sun woke up from meditation, his cultivation had been transformed by leaps and bounds. His path towards the Tao had the profundities of rebirth as its core, and he'd fused a myriad of Taos into a single furnace. He'd long since realized the might of the myriad of Taos converging into one and developing a myriad of Taos. Yet now, as he refined and absorbed this strand of chaotic quintessence, it allowed his rebirth profundities to undergo a completely new transformation, and the transformation of the rebirth profundities caused his path towards the Tao to undergo a transformation as well. Even Lin Sun himself did not expect that after experiencing so many great Tao struggles in the mortal world, he would eventually attract such a great opportunity. Compared to before, he clearly sensed that even though his cultivation was only at the late-stage boundless realm, the path of the Tao he possessed already possessed a reserve that surpassed the level of the boundless Tao Lord. One must know that the immeasurable Tao Lord was already in existence that was closest to the grand completion of the boundless realm. Yet the current Lin Sun was able to obtain such a foundation. It could be imagined how great the change this fortuitous encounter brought him was. Moreover, at this time, Lin Sun finally dared to conclude that the power of Tao creation existed, and it was contained in the original power of the ruins of wonderful Tao. The beginning, and that swordsman had probably already seen through this back then. And with my current cultivation, if I were to meet any of them, I'm afraid that I would not be qualified to compete at all. But there's no need to be anxious. However, there's no rush. This is just the mortal, transcendent realm. There will be plenty of opportunities to obtain more origin energy of chaos. Lin Sun pondered for a moment, then stood up and swept his gaze across the world. Immediately, the scenes of every place in the mortal world appeared in his mind. After refining the chaotic quintessence, Lin Sun was naturally like an incarnation of the mortal world. He could easily sense every movement in this world. Seniors, I'll take my leave first. When we meet again in the future, I'll definitely invite all of you for a drink. Lin Sun said in his heart. At the same time, Travel Sword Gorge, Fu Nanli, Ren Futian, and the other old monsters scattered in the mortal world all heard Lin Sun's voice in their hearts. At first, they were shocked. Then they could not help but cup their hands towards the sky, silently saying in their hearts, "Take care, my young friend." Above the sky, Lin Sun smiled and took a step forward. Immediately, a door appeared in front of him. When Lin Sun stepped in, his figure immediately disappeared, and in this void in the sky, there was Lin Sun's karmic Tao idol. One was dressed in a moon-white robe, with the shadows of the three great Tao ruins, Kunlun ruins and creation ruins surrounding his feet. And above his head, there was a lotus-shaped Tao diagram that represented nirvana, enshrouding it, and various supreme, great Tao profundities appeared. Vaguely, there was also a blurry shadow, coexisting with the other three great Tao ruins, emitting the wonderful quintessence energy that belonged to the various Tao ruins. It was just that it was too blurry, so it seemed extremely illusory. And not far away from Lin Sun's karmic Tao idol were the karmic Tao idols of Chen Shi, the beginning, and the swordsman. They coexisted with each other, all supreme. Of course, all of these scenes were almost impossible to see in the boundless realm, unless there was a day in the future when someone could once again surpass the heavenly cycle Tao law in the struggle for the great Tao. Perhaps there would be a chance to see it. On that day, the mortal transformation world was in an uproar. In 10 months, Lin Sun had fought more than 800 battles, sweeping through the number 1 karmic Tao idols of the 5 competitions, and in the end he surpassed the heavenly cycle Tao law. This was undoubtedly an unparalleled miracle, and what was especially popular was that according to legend, although the absolute beginning ruler had surpassed the heavenly cycle Tao law back then, it was only after being trapped for 100 years that he saw through the profundities of the mortal transformation world and opened the heavenly gates in one go. But now Lin Sun was completely unobstructed, and on the day he surpassed the heavenly cycle Tao law, he flew away. With such a comparison, people could vaguely judge in their hearts who was superior. However, everyone knew that such a comparison did not have much meaning. After all, Lin Sun was currently compared to the absolute beginning ruler of the past, and that was something that happened a long, long time ago. The current absolute beginning ruler was already a supreme existence in the ruins of Tao, and the forces under him were known as the strongest in the ruins of Tao. What happened in the mortal transformation world also reached the ears of the 9 masters of destiny of the 9 divisions of the absolute beginning path in the shortest time possible. After hearing the news, the hearts of the 9 masters of destiny of the 9 divisions of the absolute beginning path trembled, and stormy waves were set off. Surpassing the heavenly cycle Tao law of the mortal transformation world. Didn't this mean that Lin Sun's current foundation was not inferior to that of the sect master who left behind the karmic Tao idols in the mortal transformation world back then? There are 9 heavens in the realm of spirits, and Lin Sun has already crossed the first heaven. Everyone, you've all seen how terrifying this kid's cultivation is. We can't wait any longer. If we wait until he kills his way to the bound of universe, it will be too late. Qing Yangzi, the master of destiny of the Kuan division, had a grave expression. He had said such words not long after Lin Sun arrived in the mortal transformation world, but the other masters of destiny of the 8 divisions of destiny didn't care. But now, after learning of Lin Sun's feat of surpassing the heavenly cycle Tao law and hearing Qing Yangzi's words, the other masters of destiny of the 8 divisions of destiny nodded subconsciously. They also felt the seriousness of the situation. There's no chance to act in the calamity world, the second heaven. If we want to deal with him, we must act in the dark world, the third heaven. Pei Tu, the master of destiny of the Qian division, spoke in a low voice. As he spoke, he looked at Kuhi, the master of destiny of the Sun division. Kuhi, there are numerous experts under your Sun division in the dark world. Moreover, the dark world is covered in layers of mist, and it cuts off all senses of the divine sense. So long as Lin Sun enters the dark world, he'll be no different from a blind man. At that time, the subordinates of your Sun division can make a move. Kuhi nodded. We'll do our best. After a short pause, Kuhi glanced at the other masters of destiny of the 9 divisions of destiny and said, the forces under your command are spread between the 4th heaven and the 8th heaven. If Lin Sun has the chance to enter the dark world alive, all of you must not hesitate. The eyes of some masters of destiny of the 9 divisions of destiny flickered, and they nodded. But there was also someone who frowned and said, when Miss told us about Lin Sun, she didn't ask us to stop or kill him. Are we overstepping our bounds by doing this? It was the master of destiny of the Zhen division, Dubhe, who spoke these words. At that time, Miss said that Lin Sun is a variable, and the sect master is extremely interested in him. She's already telling us what we should do. Qing Yangzi spoke coldly. Dubhe, Don't forget who gave us the fortune at the beginning and brought us to the ruins of profound Tao to cultivate. Don't forget that if it wasn't for the sect master, then you, Dubhe, would have perished in the ocean of destiny over 10 years ago. Dubhe's expression changed slightly, and he said, I naturally won't go against the sect master's decree. But the crux is that the sect master is trapped now, and the young miss is by the sect master's side as well. If we act arbitrarily without any orders, then what if? When he spoke up to hear, Dubhe suddenly noticed that the gazes of many carried coldness and displeasure, and he instantly laughed bitterly and said, Never mind, I agree to act with all of you. Pei Tu said in a light voice, We should naturally work together before a great enemy. Dubhe, we are all in the realm of spirits now, and it's impossible for us to go to the realm of spirits in person. In this way, even if something unexpected happens, it won't affect the 9 of us. Under such circumstances, why can't we test Lin Sun's ability with the strength of our 9 divisions? After a pause, he sneered and said, What's more, why does the sect master want to establish the 9 divisions? Isn't his purpose to make us serve and work for him? If you don't act, it's a great disrespect to the sect master. Let alone the sect master. The ape ancestor and the young miss will be the first to not spare you. Dubhe's expression changed again. He took a deep breath and said, I know what to do, and I won't drag you down. Pei Tu, Qin Yangzi, Kahi, and the others looked at each other and nodded. None of them noticed that while they were discussing this matter, there was an old ape with 2 swords on his back outside the hall. He had been silent all the time. There will be more updates in the evening. Chapter 3255. Disaster Realm. It was a world where disasters occurred frequently and calamities abounded. The calamities were the calamities of the great Tao. Even the most common lightning tribulation possessed the destructive power that could threaten boundless realm existences. Apart from the lightning tribulation, there were also wind, fire, water, dust, and other boundless calamity auras. They were all incomparably dangerous. Since ancient times, almost all the mighty figures who entered this world would not attempt to travel and explore this world because there were too many calamities distributed in this world. Swoosh! On this day, Lin Sun's figure appeared out of thin air on a vast field in the disaster realm. He had just appeared when an earth-shattering crimson sandstorm swept over. The whimpering sound were like the cries of gods, making one shudder. Lin Sun dodged at the first instance and shifted far away. But not long after he steadied himself, the nearby void suddenly collapsed. Violent black water gushed out like a flood. The aura that emanated revealed a terrifying corrosive power. Lin Sun had no choice but to shift again. He couldn't help but feel apprehensive. There were too many Tao tribulations in this disaster realm. With his strength, he could naturally feel that whether it was the crimson sandstorm or the black flood that crushed the void, they were all filled with an aura that could threaten boundless realm existences. Normal characters wouldn't necessarily be able to block or neutralize it. It's already been 10 months. Xia Ji must be getting anxious from waiting. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun calmed his heart and sensed. Back then when he separated from Xia Ji in the mortal transformation realm, he had given her a message talisman. This way, when he arrived at the disaster realm, he could sense her location immediately. A moment later, Lin Sun's eyes lit up and his figure shifted away. Xia Ji casually sat on a rock and closed her eyes. Her beautiful little face was filled with tranquility and holiness. In the distance, there was a huge mountain. The mountain was undulating and barren. There was a gray mist covering the top and bottom of the mountain. One could vaguely see that there were already many figures standing on the mountain. Every figure stood on a different spot on the mountain, motionless. Every once in a while, a few figures could be seen walking up the mountain for a distance and then stopping. It seemed extremely strange. This mountain was the rebirth pass. To pass the barrier of life and death, one had to climb this mountain and cross it. It was just that it wasn't that easy to pass this trial, because the first step onto this mountain was like stepping onto the path of rebirth, and all thoughts would fall into a strange state that was like the cycle of reincarnation. If one was able to struggle free from the cycle of reincarnation, then one would be able to struggle free from the path of rebirth and pass the test. If one was unable to struggle free, then one would be forever trapped on the path to rebirth, and one's cultivation would gradually disperse along with the passage of time until one perished. Because rebirth originally meant death. In the annals of the past, there were many examples of people being trapped on the path of life and perishing. At this moment, there were many figures standing before the pass of life. They didn't challenge the pass, and they were watching instead as if they were waiting for something. Like Xia Ji, some were scattered in different areas to meditate and cultivate. Mississippi, suddenly, a man walked over toward Xia Ji from afar. He wore a violet gold robe, was handsome, and emitted an extremely shocking aura. "What's up?" Summer Solstice opened her eyes. Her voice was clear and pleasant like the sounds of nature, but it was cold. "How beautiful!" The man's eyes lit up while his Tao heart burned for no rhyme or reason. He took a deep breath and cupped his hands as he said, "I'm Du Kan Zhao. To tell you the truth, I'd noticed that Miss was walking alone on the first day you arrived here. Now that it's been 10 months, Miss still hasn't challenged the pass. Could it be that you have doubts?" "I'm just waiting for someone." Xia Ji's expression was tranquil. Even though she was looking at this man who called himself Du Kan Zhao, there wasn't a trace of emotion in her eyes. If it was any other person that heard this answer, that person would have probably moved away a long time ago. However, Du Kan Zhao was slightly disgruntled and said, "Oh, may I know who you're waiting for? What does it have to do with you?" Xia Ji frowned. These words were extremely blunt, and it revealed undisguised rejection and conflict. An embarrassed expression flashed on Du Sanjiao's face, and he cupped his hands and said, "Sorry for disturbing you." After that, he turned around and left. Xia Ji closed her eyes once more. In the past 10 months, countless people had come to strike up a conversation with her, and it made her a little annoyed. She really couldn't understand why those cultivators would be so bored as to strike up a conversation with her when they didn't know each other. Didn't they think that it was very annoying? Xia Ji didn't realize that this was all because of her beauty. Not only so, as a great boundless realm cultivator who could enter the heaven gate from a mortal transcendent realm and reach the rebirth pass, her unique disposition and aura of Tao held an irresistible allure to others. But fortunately, even if those men were disgruntled, they were very tactful. After all, they were all existences that had lived for countless years. None of them would act like hotheads and use some forceful methods. At this moment, when they saw the purple-gold-robed man return in defeat, many of the major powers that were watching this scene couldn't help but laugh. "This should be the 39th, right?" Someone teased. "I wonder what kind of person in this world would be able to catch the eye of such a beauty." Someone sighed. "Didn't you hear what that lady said? She's waiting for someone." Someone said softly, "Then I'd like to see who that person is. How could he bear to let such a beauty wait so bitterly here? This is intolerable." Someone said angrily. Many people's eyes flickered. They were also curious as to who that beautiful lady who could cause ripples in the hearts of these major powers was waiting for. It's definitely not someone powerful, and his cultivation is definitely not as strong as that lady. Otherwise, why would that lady be the first to arrive, and that person still hasn't left the mortal transformation realm? In my opinion, the person that lady is waiting for is probably even weaker than us. Many voices of discussion sounded. But at this moment, Xia Ji suddenly opened her eyes and said with a cold voice, "In my eyes, he's 1,000 times stronger than all of you." There was a moment of silence. Then, many people chuckled and shook their heads. "Lady, if that person of yours is so powerful, why hasn't he arrived yet?" The purple-gold-robed man, Du Kan Zhao, who had failed to strike up a conversation with her, couldn't help but ask, "If he's trapped in the mortal transformation realm, are you going to wait for him forever?" "He will come." Summer Solstice's voice was quiet and casual, as if she was talking about a matter of course. For no rhyme or reason, a strand of unwillingness surged into Du Sanjiao's heart. Or perhaps it could be said that it was a rare feeling of jealousy. He said, "But what if he doesn't come?" "I'll wait," Summer Solstice said without hesitation. Du Sanjiao's expression changed indeterminately, and he let out a long sigh. I really don't know who that lucky fellow is. If I see him, I'll definitely have a fight with him. Before he could finish speaking, a chuckle sounded from afar. You want to compete with me? His voice wasn't loud, but it clearly resounded throughout the world. Du Canjiao and the other great powers nearby were startled. To their astonishment, just as the voice rang out, 10 months had passed. The fairy-like woman who had been sitting cross-legged on the rock was the first to stand up. Her tranquil and beautiful face revealed a heartfelt smile. That smile was so beautiful that it could intoxicate one's heart. It had been 10 months, but none of the great powers present had seen that woman smile even once. Everyone could not help but feel a little jealous. Then, they saw a man dressed in moon-white robes approaching from afar. He was handsome and indifferent, and had an otherworldly air about him. It was naturally Lin Sun. I've kept you waiting. Lin Sun smiled and reached out to rub Summer Solstice's head. His voice was slightly apologetic. It's only been 10 months. It's nothing. Summer Solstice's entire face was radiant, and there was an unconcealable smile on her fair, picturesque face. The scene caused the hearts of those watching from afar to churn again. Lin Sun, he said he wanted to compete with you. Summer Solstice suddenly turned around and pointed at Du Canjiao, the purple-gold-robed man in the distance. Du Canjiao was stunned. Soon after, he revealed a confident and arrogant smile and said, "That's indeed what I said. The reason is very simple. It's because it's not worth it for this young lady. If it was me, I would definitely not allow this young lady to bitterly wait here alone for 10 months." His words were full of regret. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment. Looking at Summer Solstice beside him, he felt more and more ashamed. He cupped one hand and the other before his chest and said to Du Canjiao in the distance, "You're right." Du Canjiao was also stunned for a moment, and then he snorted coldly. "Although you seem to have apologized, it's your fault after all. How about this? Let's have a competition. I'll help this lady to vent her anger. What do you think?" He actually wanted to see what ability Lin Sun had to capture Summer Solstice's heart. This was probably a subtle feeling of unwillingness at work. Summer Solstice frowned and was about to say something, but Lin Sun stopped her with a smile. "There's no hatred between us. It's not good to fight and kill each other. Brother." Before she finished, Du Canjiao interrupted her. "There's no need to say more. Do you dare?" This, Lin Sun sighed softly and said, "As you wish." "Good. You're still a man." Du Canjiao laughed loudly. "Come on, let me test your ability. I won't bully you. You're the latecomer, so you should be the one to fight. Remember, use all your strength, or you won't even know how you lose." "That's not good, is it?" Lin Sun hesitated. "Cut the crap. Just do as I say." Du Canjiao looked more and more disdainful and calm. "Fellow Taoist, you must be careful." Lin Sun nodded, stretched out his right hand, and pressed in the void at will. Boom! Du Canjiao, who was originally confident and disdainful, felt as if his state of mind was under the heavy pressure of an ancient holy mountain. His chi almost collapsed in an instant. His face changed abruptly, and he ran his cultivation to the extreme. But the force of Lin Sun's press directly affected his state of mind. How could he resist it? Bang! In an instant, Du Sanjiao's body softened, and he fell directly to the ground, shouting anxiously, "I admit defeat." The whole audience was stunned, and the atmosphere was dead silent. How could he lose so quickly? Recalling that Du Canjiao had threatened to let Lin Sun attack first, and warned Lin Sun to use all his strength, otherwise he would lose without even knowing how he lost, the powerful figures present felt inexplicably strange. Things seemed to be reversed. At this time, Lin Sun had already retracted his palm force and apologized. "Brother, it's my fault for not controlling my strength well and startling you." Not controlling his strength well, the corners of the mouths of the powerful figures present twitched, and they were all in a mess. Chapter 32:56. To be able to enter the heavenly gate and enter the calamity world through the heavenly Tao law of the mortal transformation, he was naturally much more powerful than an ordinary cultivator of the boundless realm. As far as people knew, Du Sanjiao's cultivation was already at the top of this realm, and he was not far from the boundless Taoist master. But Du Canjiao was defeated by a single palm strike. This was naturally shocking. When they looked at Lin Sun again, the attitudes of the powerful figures present had quietly changed. "Brother, I'm sorry for offending you." Lin Sun stepped forward and helped Du Canjiao up. Du Sanjiao's expression was uncertain. After a long time, he smiled bitterly and cupped his hands. "I was overestimating myself." After a pause, he glanced at Xia Ji and said, "Don't let this lady wait for too long in the future." Lin Sun nodded with a smile. "Xia Ji, let's go," Lin Sun said softly. Xia Ji hummed and walked side by side with Lin Sun towards the rebirth pass in the distance. The powerful figures in the vicinity were surprised. Were the two planning to break through the pass directly? They all turned to look at the source of the voice. The majestic mountain was shrouded in mist. Many cultivators were trapped on the mountain path, motionless like clay statues. This was the rebirth pass. Setting foot on this mountain was equivalent to setting foot on a path to rebirth. Both body and mind would fall into a reincarnation-like state. Since ancient times, countless cultivators have been trapped here. Even more so, countless cultivators had perished on the path to rebirth. As Lin Sun and Xia Ji stepped onto the mountain, they both paused as they felt an obscure and mysterious power shrouding them. Lin Sun was extremely familiar with this aura. It was exactly the same as the aura of the samsara world in the nirvana ultimacy. At the same time, Xia Ji also felt it. She was the eternal night emperor in her previous life. In other words, she was like a reincarnated body at this moment. When she felt this aura, she actually felt that it was not unfamiliar to her. This was the aura of reincarnation. Lin Sun and Xia Ji looked at each other. Then, without delay, they walked up the mountain path. Along the way, the aura of reincarnation filled the mist and constantly impacted their minds. Moreover, as their figures grew higher and higher, the aura of samsara grew stronger, and it was simply like a surging torrent that poured down from the peak of a mountain. If it were other boundless realm existences, they would probably not be able to withstand it long ago. But it couldn't stop Lin and Xia Ji. When they were halfway up the mountain, the aura of reincarnation was like a raging storm. Lin Sun waved his sleeves, and the light all over the sky turned into a big abyss. In the rumbling sound, it directly swallowed up the samsara storm, leaving nothing behind. Xia Ji was stunned and said, "You want to use this to comprehend the profundities of samsara?" Lin Sun shook his head and said, "The power contained in the pass of rebirth is merely the tip of the samsara law. It is far less marvelous than the samsara world in the nirvana ultimacy. It is useless to study it." As they chatted, the two of them continued on their way. Soon, they reached the peak of the mountain, whereupon they vanished. Not far from the rebirth pass, Du Canjiao and the other great powers were stunned. Was he going to walk away, just like that? How was this a challenge? It was clearly a leisurely stroll, as easy as climbing a mountain. That's the pass of rebirth. Why can't it stop them at all? An old monster muttered in a daze. The dangers and difficulties of the pass of rebirth were something that everyone present knew very well. But who would have thought that there would be someone in this world who could surpass it so easily? As expected of the successor of Feng Siyuan, whose name has shaken the mortal transformation realm in the past 100 years, there were also people who sighed with emotion. What? He's Lin Sun? Du Canjiao was stunned. Only now did he realize who had defeated him with a single palm. He couldn't keep his cool anymore. It was certain that Lin Sun had only arrived in the mortal transformation realm in recent years. But now, he already possessed such a level of cultivation. How could those old monsters remain calm? After crossing the pass of rebirth, Lin Sun and Xia Ji appeared in a dusky world. Chaotic aura pervaded the place, and it exuded an ancient and primitive aura. One could vaguely see rays of brilliant light enshrouding the chaotic aura, giving off a different luster. Upon closer inspection, they were the silhouettes of almighty beings, These great powers were scattered in different areas of the world, and each of them exuded an extremely powerful aura of the great Tao. And in front of them floated a great Tao world. The dazzling and multicolored glow of the Tao effused out from the grand Tao worlds in front of these great figures, and it caused this gray and hazy world to be filled with numerous gorgeous colors. This was the Tao Building Pass. Anyone who reached this place would need to use their own cultivation to draw upon the chaotic source energy that was distributed throughout the world to build a great Tao world. When the aura of the great Tao world resonated with the chaotic source energy of the world, it would be converted into a brand that fused with the world, and one would be able to leave this place. Back in Immortal Transformation Realm, Lin Sun and Xia Ji had learned about this, so they weren't surprised. To put it simply, the so-called Tao Building Pass was to create a world that was filled with the rules of the heavenly Tao. What really piqued Lin Sun's curiosity was that it was said that the great Tao world created by the cultivators who could pass the Tao Building Pass would transform into a real cultivation world, born from the source energy of the ruins of creation, and then appear in an era of civilization. If this was true, it would be too shocking. In the ruins of profundity of Tao, a world of the grand Tao built by a boundless realm existence was able to be born in the quintessence of the ruins of creation, and it transformed into a world that truly existed in the civilization of an epic. How unbelievable were the profundities involved in this? Lin Sun couldn't help but wonder if the starry sky, ancient path, boundless world, eternal world, and other cultivation worlds that he cultivated in the past were created by some great powers in the Tao Building Pass at the very beginning? No. If that's the case, then the great Tao world created by those great powers is just a seed. The real key lies in the nurturing of the source energy of creation. Otherwise, it's impossible for this seed to germinate and break out of the ground, Lin Sun pondered. He himself had mastered the law of creation, so he naturally knew the essence and mystery of the source energy of creation. It could be said that the ruins of creation was the mother nest of each era's civilization, and it had the power to nurture creation. It was impossible for the great Tao world created by these great powers to directly transform into a cultivation world in an era civilization. What really surprised Lin Sun was that the ruins of wonderful Tao and the ruins of creation were also related. This happened to confirm his speculation many years ago. The four great ruins of Tao did not exist in isolation, but there was some kind of connection between them. In the ruins of creation, there was the river of Era. In the ultimate, there were the 5 mountains of the ultimate. In the Kunlun ruins, there was the Sea of Fate. And in the ruins of wonderful Tao, there was the source energy of chaos. There must be a connection between the source energy of the 4 great ruins of Tao. For example, the power of those cultivators who died in the Kunlun ruins would appear in the source energy of the ultimate. For example, from the Kunlun ruins Sea of Fate, one could compete to cross the ruins of wonderful Tao. For example, the era civilizations born in the ruins of creation were related to the various era worlds in the Sea of Fate. At this moment, the Tao building barrier had formed a connection with the ruins of creation, and it was like the relationship between a seed and the soil. All of this undoubtedly confirmed Lin Sun's judgment from all those years ago. Right when Lin Sun was pondering, a strange fluctuation of energy suddenly arose in this chaotic world, and it was as if a world had been split open. Extremely far away, an old man with snow-white hair and a beard stroked his beard and smiled. After spending 33,600 years of effort, I've finally established a great Tao world. His voice was filled with happiness and joy. Before him, a great Tao world had transformed into a dazzling ray of light that shot into the sky and vanished into the deepest depths of the chaos. Congratulations, fellow Taoist. A wave of congratulatory voices rose and fell. The old man cupped his fists and thanked everyone, and then his figure swiftly vanished into thin air. Obviously, he'd passed through the Tao building barrier. This scene also attracted the envy of many powerful figures in other nearby areas. But soon they all concentrated on the great Tao world in front of them. Seeing this scene, she couldn't help but whisper, "It took more than 33,000 years to pass this barrier. Is it really so difficult?" Before Lin Sun could speak, an old voice sounded not far away. "Girl, whether it's difficult or not varies from person to person. There were people with remarkable abilities who were able to successfully establish their Tao in less than 100 years and break through seclusion. Some have been here for hundreds of thousands of years, but they haven't succeeded so far. The previous fellow Taoist only spent more than 30,000 years, which is fast among all the practitioners who have passed through the Tao building barrier since ancient times." It was a black-robed young man who spoke, but his tone was extremely vicissitude. Beside the black-robed young man, there were several powerful figures. Different from others who were concentrating on Tao building, they were drinking and chatting before, and they also noticed Lin Sun and Xia Ji, who had just arrived here. "Why don't you hurry up to Tao building?" Lin Sun asked. The black-robed young man smiled. "It's not that easy to Tao building. What's more, what's the use of hurry up? In the final analysis, Tao building also depends on one's own strength, so there's no hurry. Most people are eager to pass the barrier with all their strength, step by step through the Nine-Heaven Gate, and reach the mysterious God realm. But for us, we are more willing to experience the experience along the way." Speaking of this, the black-robed young man asked Lin Sun, "What about you?" "Me?" Lin Sun was stunned for a moment, and then said with a smile, "I'm different from you. It's difficult for me to stop and take a rest." The black-robed youth seemed to understand very well. He nodded and said, "The boundless realm is known as great freedom, great unfettered. But when one truly attains this realm, one will realize that there are still many things in this world that are beyond one's control. There's the burden of gratitude and grudges. There's the fetters of karma. And there's also responsibility and bearing. If you want to stop and take a rest, it won't be so easy." "That's very kind of you," Lin Sun said with a smile. Chapter 3257. Fellow Taoists, it's your first time here. Why don't you join us for a chat? Beside the black-robed youth, an old woman in a purple robe invited them with a smile. "As you wish." Lin Sun agreed with a smile. He and Xia Ji went straight forward, sat on the ground, and started chatting with these powerful figures. Soon, they all knew each other's names and origins. When he learned that Lin Sun was the successor of the Master of Square Inch, the black-robed youth seemed to have a sudden realization and said, "So you are that Lotus." Obviously, they had all heard about Lin Sun's deeds. Next, Lin Sun took out some wine and chatted with these powerful figures about the ruins of wonders. Soon, they talked about their understanding of the great Tao. Lin Sun was also touched and inspired when he talked with them. For the black-robed youth and the others, some of the understanding and knowledge of the great Tao that Lin Sun spoke of also surprised and admired them. After a long time, Lin Sun said with a smile, "I am very happy to be able to meet all of you today and drink and chat with you. If we meet again in the future, I will definitely drink and chat with all of you." The black-robed youth said in surprise, "Fellow Taoist Lin, do you already have the confidence to pass this test?" Lin Sun thought for a moment and said, "This test shouldn't be a problem for me, and Xia. Then we will see the two of you." The purple-robed old woman said with a smile. The others also showed looks of anticipation. Lin Sun and Xia Ji stood up and came to an empty area. "Xia Ji, you go first," Lin Sun said softly. Xia Ji nodded, and there was an invisible aura surging around her graceful figure. After a while, she stretched out her hand and drew in the void. Buzz! In a nearby world, the power of the origin of chaos was drawn over like torrents and gathered under Xia Ji's slender white fingers. Then, the embryonic form of a great Tao world gradually condensed and formed. The sun and moon reflected, the mountains and rivers surged, and the landscape evolved later. All the phenomena of the heavens appeared, and the power of change in the world was born. The entire process only lasted for less than an hour, and an unfathomable world of the Grand Tao had reached a perfect state before summer solstice. Within the world of the Great Tao, the power of the rules permeated the air, Various great Taos fused into every blade of grass and every tree. There was even the aura of destiny circulating endlessly within it. Buzz, it was also at this moment that a strange resonance occurred in this chaotic world. In a nearby area, all the mighty figures who were concentrating on building their Tao were alarmed and looked over. Shua, the grand Tao world in front of summer solstice suddenly transformed into a ray of light that charged into the sky. Come quickly. She only had time to say this before her figure disappeared into thin air. I remember that woman only arrived today, right? Some of the Almighties were stunned. That's right. She arrived 6 hours ago. Before that, she had been chatting with those fellow Taoists. It's just that she actually established a world of the great Tao and left in just an hour. That's too fast, someone gasped. Among them, there were those who had been trapped here for tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, and even hundreds of thousands of years. In contrast, summer solstice's action of only taking an hour to break through the world of the great Tao was undoubtedly too shocking. It gave everyone a sense of unreality. The black-robed youth, the purple-robed old woman, and the others who had witnessed the entire process were also stunned. Their hearts were greatly impacted. After a long while, the black-robed youth couldn't help but laugh. I didn't expect that this time we would witness the birth of a great miracle. The others were also filled with emotion. When they were chatting before, summer solstice was quiet and rarely spoke. Almost everyone's attention fell on Lin Sun. No one had expected that such a beautiful girl would have such a high attainment in the great Tao. Everyone, Lin Sun will also leave first. Farewell. At this time, Lin Sun smiled and cupped his hands in greeting. Ha ha. Well, let's see how fellow Taoist Lin will break through, someone said with a smile. At this moment, the movement here had attracted the attention of many other powerful figures in this world. When they heard this, they couldn't help but look at Lin Sun. Summer solstice's previous action had shocked them. They also wanted to see what Lin Sun would do. Under the gaze of many people, Lin Sun pondered for a while and suddenly raised his hand and pointed at the void at will. Boom! The world trembled, and the power of the origin of chaos, which was like a landslide and a tsunami, swarmed toward the place where Lin Sun pointed at like crazy. The commotion was so great that it made everyone present jump in fright. They had been here for many years, but they had never seen such a big movement at the beginning of the Great Tao building. What kind of Great Tao world would he build with such a big movement? Everyone couldn't help but be curious. But before they could see it clearly, they saw a flash of divine rainbow, and Lin Sun had disappeared out of thin air. The power of the origin of chaos, which had gathered at his fingertips, disappeared without a trace. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? He stretched out his finger, and the chaos emerged. How could he break through without waiting for the Great Tao building? The black-robed young man and the purple-robed old woman couldn't sit still. They all stood up and looked at each other. Such an abnormal scene caused them to be unable to remain calm. After a long time, when the world was calm again, the purple-robed old woman muttered. He said goodbye without any ambiguity. Our fellow Taoist Lin is really elusive. What do you mean by appearing and disappearing like a ghost? I think the Tao building stage is just a figurehead to him. Someone smiled bitterly. Have you ever heard of such a thing happening before? Someone couldn't help asking. No. Everyone shook their heads. For a time, people's mood became more and more complicated. Undoubtedly, this was more amazing than the feat of summer solstice, which subverted people's cognition and imagination. Not only these powerful figures, but also Lin Sun himself was very surprised. He originally planned to build his great Tao, and he was already confident in his heart. But when he drew the power of the origin of chaos, the world seemed to be unable to bear his cultivation. So he was teleported away without giving him a chance to build his great Tao. This is probably related to the rule of creation that I have mastered. Once I build my great Tao here, it is very likely to let the great Tao world take root and sprout, turning into a real world of cultivation. Lin Sun was thoughtful. Then, Lin Sun saw that he appeared in front of a big river. The big river seemed to come from the sky, surging in the endless world of nothingness. And in different places on one side of the big river, many figures stood scattered. Summer solstice. Shadow was also among them. Lin Sun immediately walked over. So fast, Summer Solstice couldn't help but be surprised. She had just arrived, and Lin Sun appeared immediately after. Lin Sun said with a smile, "I was worried that you would wait too long." As he spoke, his gaze was already looking at the vast and mighty river. This was the third stage of the Calamity Realm, the heart-knocking stage. It was said that the water flowing in this big river had a mysterious power. When flying over it, endless waves would appear, slapping the mind of the cultivator. If the mind was not stable, they would encounter unexpected disasters. If it was light, they would be injured and return empty-handed. If it was serious, their mind would collapse and they would die. Among the three stages of the Calamity Realm, the heart-knocking stage was undoubtedly the most dangerous. And if one wanted to pass, they had to cross this big river. At this time, although there were many figures standing in the area by the big river, no one tried to pass the stage. Some people failed to pass the stage and were trapped here. Some people believed that their mind was not enough and did not dare to try rashly. When Lin Sun and Summer Solstice arrived one after another, they also attracted the attention of these powerful figures. Many people looked at the two of them. However, most of them were just curious, and there was no hostility. After all, countless years had passed, but those who could really reach the heart-knocking stage only appeared once in a long time. But today, a man and a woman arrived one after another, which was naturally very surprising. Lin Sun ignored these and said to Summer Solstice, "You go first. Remember, you must do your best. Only in this way can you get a more magical Tao fruit of chaos." After passing the heart-knocking stage, one would be able to attract a Tao fruit of chaos and enter the third heaven realm through the heavenly gate of the Calamity Realm. And the less time it took to cross the river, the more magical the Tao fruit of chaos would be. Summer Solstice nodded and went straight forward. Her graceful figure stepped in the air like a beautiful fairy. "You've just arrived and you want to pass the stage?" Many people were surprised and attracted by Summer Solstice's actions. They didn't know whether to say that she was bold or fearless. Crash! In the big river, waves like snow rose into the air and slapped fiercely at Summer Solstice. However, they did not touch her figure, but directly bombarded her mind. Summer Solstice's figure only paused for a moment, and then, as if she had adapted to this bombardment, her straight and slender legs took a step forward. In just a few breaths, she faced the rolling waves and arrived on the other side of the vast and mighty river. There was a sudden uproar in the field, and exclamations sounded everywhere. Those old monsters who had been trapped in this stage for countless years couldn't help but tremble and be stunned. She took a step into the air and floated across the river. That kind of demeanor made those powerful figures feel ashamed of their inferiority. Lin Sun secretly sighed with emotion. Summer Solstice's mind was like a clear mirror. It was because of its purity that it appeared so powerful. Although this heart-knocking stage was dangerous, it was not difficult for Summer Solstice at all. At this time, on the other side of the river, as soon as Summer Solstice's figure stood firm, a mysterious and unpredictable rain of chaotic light emerged and bathed her figure in it. That was the power of the Tao fruit of chaos. And above Summer Solstice's head, a heavenly gate appeared, as if it was boundless and high. This scene caused the other Almighties to feel envious and even a little dejected. They had been here for many years, and what they dreamed of was to cross the river and enter the heavenly gate, but they had not been able to do it so far. But Summer Solstice had just arrived, and she easily achieved all this. How could it not make people feel complicated? Chapter 3258. Lin Sun, I'll be waiting for you in the dark world. After absorbing all of the Chaos Tao fruit, Xia Ji suddenly spoke. Her figure had already turned into a ray of light and disappeared into the heaven gate. Those powerful figures subconsciously looked at Lin Sun. This person also wants to pass the trial immediately? As soon as this thought appeared in their minds, these powerful figures saw the young man, called Lin Sun, move. He took a step forward, and with his hands behind his back, he walked towards the mighty river. After that, the river suddenly roiled and gave rise to monstrous waves. Under the gazes of astonishment, the river actually split apart from the middle, and all the waves retreated to the sides, revealing a perfectly straight path that led directly to the other side of the river. Lin Sun's figure seemed to have teleported. He was not blocked at all and instantly arrived at the other side of the river. The entire place was dead silent. Everyone was dumbfounded. The knocking on the heart pass was such a dangerous pass. From ancient times until now, it was unknown how many earth-shattering, powerful figures were buried in the river. But now, the mighty river was split in two, making a path in front of Lin Sun. This scene could absolutely be said to be unprecedented. On the other side of the river, a dazzling rain of light interweaved and a chaotic source of energy emerged, bathing Lin Sun's figure in it. It was faintly discernible like a dream. As expected, it's still the source of energy that belongs to the ruins of wonderful Tao. Lin Sun's heart shook. Just like when he left the mortal transformation world, what he obtained was not the Chaos Tao fruit, but a more mysterious source of chaos than the Chaos Tao fruit. Lin Sun could clearly feel that his cultivation was undergoing an astonishing change, and he was constantly advancing towards the late stage of the boundless realm. It was not until a long time later that this transformation ended. Lin Sun could keenly feel that in his great Tao with nirvana as the core, there was an additional chaotic and obscure source of energy. It was difficult to describe what kind of source of great Tao it was. It was like chaos, indescribable, but it could also transform into the myriad of Tao in the world. Could this be the source of the ruins of wonderful Tao? Chaos, indescribable, but it has the power to nurture the innate chaotic law. If I can understand its mysteries, doesn't it mean that I can master the power of Tao creation? Lin Sun calmed down and sensed. Unfortunately, even though he had obtained the chaos source energy that belonged to the ruins of Tao twice, it was incomplete in the end, and it wasn't complete. So, Lin Sun was only able to sense a slight and subtle mysterious aura of nurturing the great Tao. As for whether to master the power of Tao creation in the end, it is still difficult to draw a conclusion. Shaking his head, Lin Sun moved his mind, and a gate of heaven appeared in front of him. As he stepped forward, he disappeared in the disaster realm in an instant. Meanwhile, at the banks of the great river, those great figures were all in a daze. It was as if they were witnessing an unprecedented miracle, and their minds were in turmoil. No one knew that in less than one day after arriving at the disaster world, Lin Sun and Xia Ji broke through the three barriers of reincarnation, Tao building and heart-knocking, attracted the fruit of chaos in one fell swoop, and left. Dark world. Heaven and earth were filled with gray mist that was thick to the point of not dispersing. Being situated inside, even if it was a boundless realm existence, their divine sense would be isolated too, unable to sense the surroundings. With just his eyes, he could only see three zhang around him. Since ancient times until now, no one knew exactly how big the dark world was. Moreover, there were many beings that could be said to be great calamities distributed in this world. They moved silently, and they were able to come and go freely within the dense mist and kill without a sound. The most mysterious thing was that the bodies of these great calamities were all ethereal like mist, and they were hidden in the dark world that was covered in dense mist. It was the most impossible to guard against them. Such ferocious creatures were also known as fog spirits. According to rumor, there were two ways to leave the dark world. One was to hunt down 49 mist spirits and utilize their energy to build a Tao platform. Then, they would naturally be able to attract the fruit of chaos and open the gate of heaven. This method was the most dangerous, and it was impossible for it to take a short amount of time, because the strength of the mist spirits was sufficient to threaten a boundless realm existence, and it could be said to be terrifying to the extreme. It was even to the extent that, according to rumor, There was a mist spirit in the dark world that wasn't weaker than the boundless Tao Lord, and it was called the Mist Spirit King. In the past, there had been many boundless realm experts that had been killed by the Mist Spirit King. In short, to any cultivator, the Mist Spirit King was the least willing to offend in the dark world. Once they encountered it, then it would absolutely be equivalent to death. On the other hand, the second method to leave the dark world was through sacrifice. By sacrificing one's Tao body, one's soul core would be able to leave the dark world with ease. Moreover, one wouldn't be able to obtain the fruit of chaos, so the price one had to pay couldn't be said to be small. Normally speaking, unless one was forced into a dead end, otherwise no one would choose this method to leave. If we want to leave this place, then we must each hunt and kill 49 mist spirits. Moreover, we must kill them ourselves, and others are unable to help us. Within a gray and hazy world that was covered in mist, Lin Sun and Xia Ji stood side by side. He glanced at the surroundings and spoke in a light voice. Even though it's slightly troublesome, it can't be considered to be too dangerous. His divine sense tried to stretch out, yet was obstructed by the mist in the nearby area, whereas his gaze merely covered an area of 10 m, and it was even enveloped by mist. All in all, such a situation was extremely troublesome and dangerous, and it was no different from becoming blind. There were many methods to resist the assault of danger. For example, circulating one's cultivation and spreading one's might to the nearby area. In this way, one would be able to resist any danger before it even came close. Another example was to withdraw some treasures and have them float around one's body, and it could similarly be used for defense. But the drawbacks of doing this were very obvious as well. It was that one had to utilize one's cultivation at all times. It was fine for a short period of time, but no one would be able to endure it for a long period of time. As for treasures, even though they were extremely intelligent, Lin Sun had already tested it earlier. Within the dark world that was covered in mist, one would lose connection and sense with a treasure once it was more than 10 m away from one's body. All in all, the mist in the dark world was extremely mysterious, and it suppressed the perception of all boundless realm figures, causing cultivators to be in an extremely dangerous situation. However, Lin Sun didn't panic. Perhaps the assault of danger would catch one off guard, but with his current cultivation, he didn't fear the assault of those mist spirits at all. Lin Sun, which direction are we going? Xia Ji's expression was also very calm, and her clear eyes glanced around. The mist is thick, and we can go anywhere. How about? Halfway through his words, Lin Sun raised his eyebrows, and he suddenly raised his hand to grab towards one side. Boom! In the rolling mist, a smoke-like figure squirmed violently, and it was firmly grasped by the force of Lin Sun's palm. But in the next moment, with a bang, the figure turned into countless strands of gray light, and it easily broke free from the force of Lin Sun's grasp and flashed towards the distance. Come here, Xia, she suddenly spoke softly, and a large net formed by the interweaving power of cause and effect spread out, as if the net of heaven was wide and without any loopholes. And those strands of gray light were like a shoal of fish that had fallen into the net. No matter how violently they struggled, it was in vain, and they were grabbed over by Xia Ji. Lin Sun couldn't help but look up, and he saw these gray light condense together again, transforming into a strange creature that was completely condensed from a strange misty rule of the Great Way. But there were fluctuations of breath that belonged to life on its body. There was no doubt that this was a fog spirit, and its strength was not weaker than that of an ordinary figure in the boundless realm. Let me have a look. Lin Sun was curious, and he stretched out a finger to press on the fog spirit. Suddenly, a burst of disorderly memory fragments came to Lin Sun's mind, and his pupils narrowed. After a long time, he gently breathed out a mouthful of turbid air, and his face had a touch of seriousness. This fog spirit is actually a spirit transformed from the remnant soul of a practitioner, and it is formed by absorbing the power of the origin of chaos distributed in this world. No wonder it can possess the power of the boundless realm. This was beyond Lin Sun's expectation. But if so, At the beginning, the first practitioner to arrive at the dark world couldn't have met the fog spirit. If he didn't meet the fog spirit, how did he leave the fog spirit world? Xia Ji was also stunned. Lin Sun pondered, the two ways to leave the dark world we know now are the cognition that has been passed down from ancient times to the present. But just as you've said, if the mist spirits distributed throughout this world were formed from the remnant souls of the cultivators that perished here, then the first person to arrive at the dark world at the very beginning was either trapped to death here, or they utilized a method of sacrifice to leave, or there's another unknown method that allows cultivators to leave hidden within the dark world. It should be so. Xia Ji nodded. Lin Sun said, we have just arrived, and there will be plenty of time to explore the dark world in the future. By the way, this is your prey. Suppress it first. Xia Ji raised her hand, and the fog spirit turned into a gray light and disappeared into her sleeve. Seeing this, Lin Sun was about to say something, but suddenly frowned and looked into the fog in the distance. What's wrong? Xia Ji asked. I seem to feel that someone was peeping in the dark before, but it disappeared in a flash. Lin Sun said in a low voice. Maybe it is a practitioner who broke into the dark world like us, Xia Ji said casually. Lin Sun nodded and stopped thinking about it. He said, let's get out of here first. They didn't delay any more and went in one direction. They were very cautious all the way. They didn't move, but flew slowly towards the depths of the fog. The hall was built on a large mountain in the dark world. Layer upon layer of restrictions were set up in the surroundings of the hall, and it isolated the nearby mist from the outside world. The interior of the hall was brightly lit, as bright as day. A white-robed old man, who looked like a candle in the wind, sat alone on the throne in the center of the palace, staring at a map made of brown animal skin in his hand with a pair of turbid eyes. What is hidden in the dark spring? Why is it marked as a forbidden and ominous place by his lord in the map, and forbade us from exploring it? The old man murmured in his heart. He had been thinking about this question for many years. Chapter 32:59. The Dark Spring. It was a forbidden place in the dark world. What kind of taboo was hidden there? The white-robed old man didn't know. He only knew that a terrifying fog spirit king was lurking at the bank of the dark spring. Many years ago, the white-robed old man brought people to investigate, but they were discovered by the fog spirit king before they could get close. The white-robed old man and the others only escaped after they sacrificed the lives of 3 boundless realm cultivators. Since then, they didn't dare to go near that ominous place. Brother Tushan. Suddenly, a voice came from outside the hall. The white-robed old man, sitting alone on the central throne, put away the animal skin map in his hand and looked at a figure who hurried into the hall. It was a handsome man in a fiery robe. Qin Kuei just sent a message saying that Lin Sun has appeared. The man in the fiery robe looked very happy, and there was a smile in his voice. Lin Sun. The white-robed old man narrowed his eyes, but he didn't look happy at all. Instead, he frowned and said, "This troublesome problem has come." Troublesome? The man in the fiery robe stopped smiling and said, "Brother Tushan, do you think that even the 57 people of our Sun tribe in the dark world will encounter trouble if we attack together? If we were dealing with an ordinary person, the Lord would never order us to go all out. But this Lin Sun is not simple. He is the successor of the master of the heart dimension, and he is regarded as a variable that has never appeared since ancient times. Not too long ago, I received news from the mortal transformation realm that Lin Sun swept through the 5 strongest Tao karma avatars and obtained an unprecedented Tao fruit of primordial chaos. His achievements are comparable to the sect leader back then. The white-robed old man said slowly, "How could such a terrifying person be so easy to deal with?" The man in the fiery robe was stunned, and his face was gloomy. Only now did he realize the seriousness of the problem. After a long time, he said in a low voice, "Brother Tushan, what do you think we should do?" The white-robed old man took out the beast skin geomantic map and said, "Tell me, where did this child appear and which direction did he head in?" The man in the fiery robe immediately stepped forward and pointed to a place marked Green Flame Mountain on the animal skin map. Qin Kuei said that Lin Sun and a woman appeared at a place 1,300 kilometers away from Green Fire Mountain. They went southwest together. If they didn't change their direction, they would pass by Skeleton Ridge, Demon Mountain, Fire Spirit Desert. Pausing for a moment, he continued, "The dark world is shrouded in thick mist. They definitely do not dare to teleport forward. If they rely on flying, their speed will definitely be much slower. It will not be difficult to catch up to them." Over the countless years, the experts of their Sun tribe had explored many areas of the dark world, and they had long since figured out many areas of the dark world. The Sun tribe had explored many areas of the dark world for countless years. He left the vicinity of Green Flame Mountain and headed southwest. A strange expression suddenly appeared on the white-robed old man's face. "What if we use our strength to lure them to the vicinity of the Dark Spring and borrow the strength of the Mist Spirit King to deal with them? In this way, we don't have to fight with Lin Sun, and we don't have to worry about casualties." The eyes of the man in the fiery robe flickered. "It's a good way to kill people with a borrowed knife. But how can we lead them there?" The white-robed old man was silent for a moment and said, "Either we don't do it, or we do it quickly. Otherwise, we will alert the enemy." As he said, he stood up from the throne and said, "Yu Jiang, you come to deliver the message and gather all the people of Sun tribe in front of the sky, Demon Mountain." The man in the fiery robe was shocked and said, "Do you really want to finish it in one stroke?" The old man's cloudy eyes suddenly became as sharp as a sword. "To deal with such a dangerous character, we should go all out and not hold back." The man in the fiery robe, called Yu Jiang, nodded. The fog was thick and didn't disperse. 2 hours later, boom, the fog rolled and swept. As soon as a fog spirit approached silently, it was caught by Lin Sun as if he had foreseen it. The force of his palm was like a great abyss. Even if the strength of the fog spirit was comparable to a boundless realm existence, it was still unable to endure such a palm, and it was immediately suppressed and put away. "I also have 5 fog spirits," Lin Sun said with a smile. During the 2 hours, he and Xia Ji kept moving forward in one direction. They encountered many attacks of fog spirits along the way, but they were all easily subdued without exception. Up to now, the two had 5 fog spirits respectively. According to this situation, they would collect 49 fog spirits respectively in less than 20 hours, so that they would have the opportunity to leave the dark world. Except for the fog blocking the divine soul, this place is not too dangerous. Compared with the mortal transformation world and the disaster world, it is a bit boring. Xia Ji said softly. Lin Sun laughed. This place was absolutely dangerous for other great boundless realm figures, but for him and Xia Ji, it was not much of a threat. At this moment, swish, a strand of sword qi suddenly appeared in the fog. Like a peerless ray of light, it cut through the darkness, dazzling and sharp. At the same time as the sword qi swept out, a cyan spear, a silver sea of fire, a black furnace, and a golden thunderbolt appeared one by one in other places. Each of them burst out the infinite power of rules and rushed toward Lin Sun and Xia Ji. Boom! The world trembled, the fog rolled, and the brilliant and dazzling Taoist light was mixed with terrifying killing intent, like 100,000 volcanoes erupting at the same time. Undoubtedly, this was a killing tribulation that had been prepared for a long time. In this world where the fog blocked the divine sense, it could often have an unexpected effect, and it could be said to be fatal. But Lin Sun and Xia Ji were more calm than the other, and their expressions didn't change in the slightest. When the killing tribulation came, Lin Sun stepped forward and waved his sleeve, and endless sword qi emerged like billions of stars in the starry sky. On the other hand, Xia Ji gestured with her white hand, causing a mighty river of time to surge out and protect both of them within it. Shockingly, this was the miraculous effect of the time seal. Bang, bang, bang. A wave of densely packed collisions and explosions resounded like thunderclaps that shook the heavens and the earth. The dazzling sword chi shattered into powder. The silver sea of flames dispersed like rain, and the golden lightning was shattered inch by inch. On the other hand, the green spear and black furnace suffered heavy injuries that were severe to the point of being unable to repair, and they wailed violently as they were blasted flying. As the endless sword chi spread out with a wave of Lin Sun's sleeve, there was a burst of noise in the nearby fog, including screams, angry shouts, and muffled groans. At this moment, the fog in the nearby area was crushed and disappeared, and the scene of heaven and earth became clear. Several figures gathered together and fled to the distance. They failed to hit the target and fled far away. Why do these guys want to deal with us? We'll know once we catch them and interrogate them. While talking, Lin Sun had already taken action, and Xia Ji followed him step by step. Not long after they left, the area was once again shrouded in mist. Those enemies fled very fast, as if they were not afraid of being targeted by the fog spirits distributed in the fog at all. Lin Sun couldn't help but frown slightly. His spiritual awareness couldn't be used, which greatly affected him when he was chasing. Fortunately, when the enemy was escaping through the air, they caused quite a bit of activity, leaving behind many traces in the mist. As long as he followed these traces, he didn't have to worry about losing them. When tracking, Lin Sun had judged that there were 6 enemies in total, who obviously came from the same camp and were extremely familiar with the Dark World. It could also be seen that they had done many similar things in the Dark World and were already familiar with the tactics of fleeing after failing to hit the target. No, but soon, Lin Sun noticed something wrong. How could a group of boundless realm existences, who often did this kind of interception, leave so many traces when they fled? If it were a normal person, he would also disturb the fog along the way to erase the traces of his escape, so that the enemy couldn't find any trace of him at all. Are these guys deliberately luring me to follow them? Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly. Thinking of this, he immediately stopped and said to Xia Ji, "Something is wrong. Don't chase them. You suspect that they are deliberately luring us to chase them?" Xia Ji said, "It should be so." Lin Sun's eyes flickered. "I have many enemies in the ruins of wonderful Tao, but there are very few in the Dark World who come from the same camp. If I'm not wrong, those guys just now must be the mandate messengers under the command of the primordial sovereign." After a pause, he said, "When we just arrived, I noticed that someone seemed to be spying on us in the dark. Now it seems that it should be the role of the enemy camp. It was that guy who sent out our movements, so we were ambushed before. But why did he lure us to chase them instead of fighting us directly?" Xia Ji said. Lin Sun thought for a while and said, "If he can defeat us with some tricks, why would he risk his life to fight us? In short, these opponents are definitely harboring evil intentions. If we continue to chase after them, we might be met with an unpredictable calamity." "Then what should we do?" Xia Ji asked. Lin Sun's eyes were dark and cold. Since the enemy's plan failed, they will definitely take action again. We can't let them lead us by the nose. Then continue to kill the fog spirits? That's exactly what I want. Lin Sun laughed and immediately walked towards the distant fog with Xia Ji. Just 10 minutes later, a group of figures appeared where Lin Sun and Xia Ji had been standing. They were all injured more or less, and all of them were sword wounds. These were the enemies who had been chased by Lin Sun before. "I didn't expect that they would see through us," someone said with a gloomy face. Others' expressions also changed. After a while, someone said in a low voice, "In my opinion, we'd better go to Tiansha Mountain first and tell Brother Tishan about it. Let him decide." "Okay," others agreed. But at this moment, suddenly a calm voice sounded, "You can leave if you want to." Chapter 3260. The group of experts from the Sun tribe were shocked. Bang! A terrifying aura emanated from their bodies. All of them withdrew their treasures at the first possible moment and teleported towards the mist in the distance with all their might. Their reaction speed was astounding. After all, they were all existences in the boundless realm. How could they be ordinary existences that could roam the dark world all year round? What was even faster than them was a strand of sword intent that soared through the sky. It shot into the sky like a rainbow, and it carried a majestic aura that could suppress all chaos in the world as it suddenly appeared in this misty world. Bang! The group of experts felt as if a sword had slashed through their minds, and they felt a sharp pain as if their lives were being torn apart. It seemed as if their minds had been slashed apart, and their vision went black. How could an ordinary Tao injury compare to a heavy injury in their mind? All of them staggered, and their vital energy was in disorder. They couldn't help but cry out in pain. Shit! Ask for help. As soon as the voice sounded out, Xia Ji attacked. She waved the white-boned spear and stabbed out 5 times in an instant. Bang! 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 5 figures fell to the ground, and their bodies transformed into ashes that filled the sky like paper. They were dead. As for the remaining person, he was grabbed by Xia Ji and imprisoned firmly. Bang! Only then did the majestic sword intent that soared through the sky dissipate. Lin Sun's figure walked over. He glanced at the person that Xia Ji captured and couldn't help but smile. These fellows are really impatient. They probably didn't expect that we would come back. As she spoke, Xia Ji had already passed the expert to Lin Sun. It was a man in an official robe, and he was the leader of this group of experts. At this moment, he was unconscious. Lin Sun didn't intend to wake him up and interrogate him. He directly circulated the secret technique and started searching his soul. In next to no time, many memories and information were sensed by Lin Sun like a tide. Only now did Lin Sun know that these experts were from the Sun tribe of the 9 tribes of the Taichu tribe, and they came to deal with him under the orders of the Mandate Lord of the Sun tribe, Sun He. In this dark world, there were a total of 57 mandate messengers of the Sun tribe, and the leader was a white-robed old man called Tu Shanlong. Apart from that, there was also some other miscellaneous news. Of course, the most useful thing to Lin Sun was that he'd obtained a map related to the dark world during the soul search. With this map, at least he wouldn't get lost in the dark world. At the same time, Lin Sun finally understood that the purpose of the ambush was to lead him and Xia Ji to a forbidden place called Dark Spring. There was a fog spirit king guarding that forbidden area. The Sun clan's mandate messenger's plan was very simple. They wanted to kill them with a borrowed knife. Knowing this, Lin Sun was not surprised. Ever since Lin Sun entered the mortal transformation world, a heavenly destined envoy from the Kuan tribe had tried to kill him. Now that he was ambushed by a heavenly destined envoy from the Sun tribe in the dark world, it was within Lin Sun's expectations. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun made a decision and walked away with Xia Ji. Tian Sha Mountain. If Qin Kuei and others succeeded, they should have led Lin Sun and the woman to the dark spring. Yu Jiang, who was wearing a fiery robe, said softly. Beside him, there were dozens of powerful figures from the Sun tribe. All of them restrained their aura. In the misty Tian Sha Mountain, it was hard to notice them. Is there any news? The white-robed old man, Tu Shanlong, frowned. Not yet. Yu Jiang shook his head. No matter if the operation succeeds or fails, Qin Kuei and others will send the news as soon as possible. But there's no news now. Tu Shanlong's expression became serious. In my opinion, things have become bad. Yu Jiang's heart shook. Have they met with trouble? Trouble is a small problem. I'm just worried that Lin Sun is already on his way to the Tian Sha Mountain. Tu Shanlong took a deep breath and made a decision. We can't wait any longer. Let's go to the dark spring now. As he said this, he took the lead. Yu Jiang was stunned. Although he felt that Tu Shanlong was a little too cautious, he still led the group and followed. Leave some traces on the way. I want Lin Sun and others to know that we are already on our way to the dark spring. On the way, Tu Shanlong suddenly said, Okay. Yu Jiang nodded and agreed. In next to no time, their group vanished within the boundless mist. An hour later, Lin Sun and Xia Ji appeared on the Tian Sha Mountain. These guys are really vigilant, Lin Sun said. He had already checked around and found that the enemies had left in a hurry before they arrived. Should we go after them? Xia Ji asked. Yes, Lin Sun said without hesitation. Although the dark world was covered with mist, he already had a map of this world, so he was not as passive as before. This way. Soon, Lin Sun noticed the traces left by Tu Shanlong and others. It was so obvious that they were left by the enemies on purpose. As Lin Sun chased after them, he soon realized that Tu Shanlong and others were heading for the Dark Spring. Such an action was enough to prove something. First, the enemies were extremely cautious and didn't dare to fight with him face to face. It was possible that they had learned something about him. Second, the Dark Spring was known as an ominous place in this world. The enemies wanted to use this forbidden place to deal with him. However, the more it was so, the more curious Lin Sun was. According to the information he obtained from Soul Search earlier, the dim spring was extremely strange and terrifying, and in these countless years of time, even Tu Shanlong and the other emissaries of the Sun clan didn't dare rashly investigate it. In that case, what kind of strange thing was hidden in the Dark Spring? Of course, it couldn't be the Fog King. After dealing with those enemies, I have to go to the vicinity of the Dark Spring, Lin Sun thought to himself. 2 hours later, Lin Sun's speed suddenly slowed down because he would arrive at the forbidden area where the Dark Spring was located 1,000 miles ahead, and the traces left by the enemies also disappeared from this moment. It could be said that in this misty world, it was very likely that they would encounter all kinds of surprise attacks and killings. But to Lin Sun's surprise, as he and Xia Ji approached the Dark Spring, there was no danger along the way. Why don't I see any trace of the enemies? Xia Ji couldn't help asking. At this time, Lin Sun had completely understood. Their purpose is to let me fight with the Fog King. Before that, they won't show up easily. As soon as he said this, a sneer sounded. Lin Sun, you shouldn't have come here. The voice rumbled in the mist. Following closely, hundreds of dangerous breaths suddenly appeared in the nearby mist, all rushing towards Lin Sun and Xia Ji. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes, pinched his fingers, and knocked in the void. Boom! The mist around suddenly collapsed and dispersed, as if it was swept away by a storm. Then Lin Sun and Xia Ji saw dense fog spirits coming from all directions like a tide. This was not the Fog King, but the formation was more terrible, because each of those fog spirits was not weaker than the existence of the great boundless realm. However, Lin Sun and Xia Ji calmed down. They looked at each other and immediately made a move. Boom! Lin Sun's tall figure suddenly rose into the sky. At that moment, it was like a big abyss covering the sky. The majestic divine light of the great way spread, tore the mist in all directions, and illuminated the sky and the earth. As he swung his fist, the heavens and the earth suddenly wailed while space collapsed, and it seemed to be unable to endure the might of the punch. A group of mist spirits had just charged over when they were swept by the boundless force of the punch, and a large expanse of them was easily crushed. They were utterly powerless to struggle free. In another direction, Xia Ji also made a move. Her graceful figure paced in the air, and the white bone spear in her hand swept out. Suddenly, a torrent of time emerged, like the Milky Way falling into the world from outer space. All the fog spirits swept by were firmly imprisoned, as if they were trapped in a space-time vortex. Next, as Lin Sun and Xia Ji joined hands, the nearby fog spirits were suppressed in groups like a group of moths flying into the fire. The whole process was like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds. In a moment, all the fog spirits had been swept away. Far away, there was a low hill. Tu Shanlong and the rest of the Sun tribe's heaven's mandate messengers were standing on it. When they saw what happened, their faces changed dramatically, and their hands and feet felt cold. Even Tu Shanlong's old face was filled with solemnity. Too powerful, far more powerful than they had imagined. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they wouldn't dare to believe that a man and a woman who had just entered the mortal realm for less than a year could possess such heaven-defying power. Thank you for your gifts. It would be impolite for me to refuse these fog spirits. Lin Sun's voice sounded from afar. His gaze had already landed on Tu Shanlong and the other powerful figures. The mist in this area had been temporarily dispersed, making it impossible for Tu Shanlong and the others to hide. Damn it! Yu Zhang's face was livid. Just as Lin Sun said, the hundreds of fog spirits were subdued by the Sun tribe's heaven's mandate messengers. They were released to besiege Lin Sun and Xie Ji. Who would have thought that the fog spirits were like sheep entering a tiger's mouth? They were suppressed by Lin Sun and Xie Ji. Let's go. Tu Shanlong's pupils shrank. Sensing that Lin Sun and Xie Ji were flying towards them, he didn't dare to delay any longer. But right at this moment, boom, a terrifying and cold aura suddenly spread out from afar. It was as if a supreme ruler that had been sleeping for thousands of years had awakened. Just that aura alone was enough to make Tu Shanlong and the others freeze. Lin Sun and Xie Ji, who were flying over, also felt a chill in their hearts, and they stopped in their tracks. Far away, the mist that covered the sky dispersed, revealing a figure that was 10,000 feet tall. Chaotic torrents surged around his body like a raging waterfall. The torrents were cryptic and violent, and their might was enough to crush the void in this area. From afar, the 10,000 feet tall figure looked like a giant god that walked out from the chaos. Chapter 3261. Fog Spirit King. Tu Shanlong and the others gasped in shock. A long time ago, they had witnessed the terror of such a ferocious creature. They knew very well that no one could suppress it unless the boundless Taoist master came in person. Subconsciously, they turned around and fled, not daring to stay any longer. While fleeing, Tu Shanlong suddenly noticed that Lin Sun and the woman next to him didn't leave. What happened next stunned Tu Shanlong even more, because Lin Sun rose into the air and charged at the Fog Spirit King. Tu Shanlong and the people around him all stopped and looked astonished. Is he courting death? Someone asked subconsciously. Everyone's expression changed. Earlier, they tried to lure Lin Sun here, intending to use the Fog Spirit King to kill Lin Sun. But they didn't expect that the hundreds of fog spirits failed to surround Lin Sun. Their plan was aborted and declared a failure. They thought that Lin Sun would choose to retreat under such circumstances. Who would have thought that Lin Sun would take the initiative to attack the Fog Spirit King? This was completely beyond their imagination, and they felt a little strange. I've seen people courting death, but I've never seen one like this. This is a great help to us. Yu Jiang sneered. At this time, they were not in a hurry to escape. Boom! In the distance, Lin Sun and the Fog Spirit King had already started fighting fiercely. The heaven and earth were shaking, and the light of Taoism shot up into the sky and the earth. Lin Sun's body was enshrouded in the light of Taoism, which made him look extraordinary. Every move he made was like a supreme ruler who controlled all the Tao in the world. The Fog Spirit King was not to be underestimated either. Torrents of chaos flowed in his towering figure, which evolved all kinds of incredible power of rule and stirred up the world. Great! In the battle, Lin Sun's eyes lit up. It was a feeling of excitement that he had finally found a worthy opponent. He didn't hold back anymore and fought with the Fog Spirit King with all his strength. Ever since he entered the mortal transformation realm, he had made multiple breakthroughs in his cultivation. He had obtained the origin of chaos twice. In his battle with his master, the master of the square inch, his state of mind had undergone a metamorphosis. In the battle of the Tao, he had also seen through the supreme path of the Tao that his opponents possessed. The repeated transformations made Lin Sun's combat power improve again and again. Until now, Lin Sun didn't even know how powerful his combat power was. After all, since he entered the Dark World, he hadn't encountered any formidable opponents. Now, the Fog Spirit King was definitely a good opponent, especially when fighting with the Fog King. Lin Sun felt that there was a mysterious power in the Fog King, which made the power of the Fog King different and stronger than he had imagined. Lin Sun suspected that even the boundless Taoist master was inferior to the Fog Spirit King. The reason was very simple. A figure at the level of the boundless Tao Lord only possessed the might of the myriad Taos converging into one. For example, the 5 Tao karmic avatars that were known as the number 1 heavenly cycle Tao law in the mortal transformation realm possessed power of this level. But back in the mortal transcendent realm, Lin Sun was already able to defeat them one by one. In contrast, the power displayed by the Fog Spirit King was clearly much more powerful. And this power didn't come from the Fog Spirit King himself, but from the power of the origin power it possessed. In other words, the Fog Spirit King was borrowing some kind of origin power. But the more it was so, the more satisfied Lin Sun was. How can an ordinary opponent have this kind of strength? Rumble, rumble, the battle grew more and more terrifying, and the entire world revealed a chaotic scene of being overturned. Seeing that Lin Sun could fight with the Fog Spirit King to such an extent, Tushan Lung and the others felt a chill in their hearts, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. If they had known that Lin Sun was so powerful, they wouldn't have dared to act rashly. Many of them even felt lucky that they didn't fight Lin Sun head-on. Otherwise, no one would be able to bear the consequences. Let's go. We must leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, when Lin Sun recovers, we won't be able to leave even if we want to. Tushan Lung couldn't stand it anymore. He turned around and left, not daring to continue watching the battle. Seeing this, the others didn't dare to hesitate and fled as well. Xia Ji saw all this, but she didn't chase after them. Compared with those enemies, she cared more about Lin Sun's safety. What was more, in the dark world, there would be plenty of opportunities to deal with those enemies in the future. Boom! After a quarter of an hour, the Fog Spirit King couldn't stand it anymore. Its body collapsed with a loud crash, setting off a torrent of chaos. Stop! Stop! I give up. A tender child's voice rang out in the rolling mist. Lin Sun was in a daze. He looked up and saw a fist-sized water droplet floating in the place where the Spirit King's body collapsed. It was crystal clear and surrounded by wisps of obscure breath. The child's voice from before had come from this water droplet. Lin Sun stepped forward and came to the water drop in an instant. He asked with great interest, "What are you?" He was so surprised that the Fog Spirit King turned out to be a water drop. What was the origin of this water drop? I'm not a thing, but a spirit. The childish voice came from the water drop. Born by the origin of chaos in this world, I control the complete power of gloomy dark. Similar to the spirit of order, Lin Sun was surprised. He only knew that the power of order could give birth to inborn spirits. But he didn't expect that even the origin of chaos and the ruins of wonderful Tao could give birth to the spirit of chaos. You can understand it that way, but I'm the spirit of an ancestor of a Tao of laws. I can evolve into an eternal world, and I can also transform into the origin of chaos of a great world. I can evolve the power of the 10,000 Taos of this world, and the power of order can all be born from me. Most importantly, I have wisdom. The water drop was floating in the air, and the clear voice revealed a unique rhythm. Lin Sun was surprised. If so, the power of this water drop was incredible, and it was indeed far beyond the spirit of order. Can you create a way that has never existed in the world? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. The voice in the water drop said, "No, I'm just a spirit born by the origin of chaos, and the way you said belongs to the origin of chaos." Lin Sun understood that this water drop was born from the origin of chaos in the ruins of wonderful Tao, just like the fruit of chaos. The difference between the two was that the fruit of chaos contained a complete rule of chaos, while this water drop was a spirit of chaos. It was like the difference between the power of order and the spirit of order. Do you have a name? Xia Ji came from afar and asked curiously, staring at the water drop with her clear eyes. So, did she? It was the first time she saw such a unique and mysterious spirit. Of course. A long time ago, a swordsman came to this world. Just as he was speaking, the water droplet suddenly spun, and a light and shadow emerged, turning into a scene. In the picture, a man squatted before a spring with a grin on his face, and he stared at a small water drop that was like a glass ball. He seemed to have noticed the most interesting thing in the world, and his face was covered in a smile. This man wore a brown robe, and his long hair was casually tied into a bun with a 3-inch wooden sword. He had handsome features, clear and clean eyes, and his entire body emitted a graceful and unrestrained aura. He squatted there casually, blinked, and looked at the water drop with a grin on his face. After a short while, he chuckled and said, "Little fellow, even though your intelligence hasn't truly awakened, you can definitely sense me. If I'm right, then jump into my hand." He stretched out his right hand. The small water drop moved slightly and directly jumped into the man's palm. The man couldn't help but laugh. "Interesting. Unfortunately, if I take you away now, I'll destroy your hope of transforming and awakening. How about this? I'll give you a name. When you awaken your intelligence in the future, if we meet again, call me by my name and I'll recognize you." The small water drop rolled around in the man's palm. It seemed to be looking forward to a name. "How about I call you Raleigh?" The man teased. The small water drop started trembling and jumping repeatedly, as if it was expressing resistance. This caused the man to be unable to refrain from roaring with laughter, and he said, "You're so intelligent and were born in the dark world, so you'll definitely shine brilliantly once you awaken in the future. Yet it just so happens that I've met you today. How about this? I'll call you Spirit Affinity. You're born with intelligence, and you're fated to be formed by the heavens. I hope we're fated to meet again in the future." The small water drop happily rolled around in the man's palm. Obviously, it approved of this name. The man thought for a moment before he removed the wooden sword that was stabbed into his bun, and then he flicked with his finger, causing the wooden sword to sink into the depths of the spring. He pointed at the wooden sword and said, "When someone is able to take this sword away in the future, then follow him and allow him to take you away from the ruins of Tao." As soon as he finished speaking, the man held up the small water drop and placed it back into the spring, and then he stood up and grinned as he waved his hand. "I'm going to cultivate my grand Tao once more. Goodbye, young brother." As soon as he finished speaking, he smiled as he swaggered off, and his tall figure strode through the heavens and the earth before gradually vanishing. The scenes also disappeared. Lin Sun's heart was already in turmoil at this moment. He knew who the man was, but he didn't expect that he had formed a bond with the water drop and named it here. Nurturing the heart like jade, sharpening the heart like a blade. The demeanor of this senior swordsman is really unique in the world. Lin Sun murmured in his heart. When he was in the void above the sky of the mortal transformation world, he had seen the swordsman's sleeves fluttering, his body reflecting the reincarnation, and there was a boundless sea of swords surging under his feet. That swordsman was a supreme legend that was comparable to the beginning, and Chunshi, "Hey, can you take me away?" The clear voice of a child came from the water drop, with desire and expectation. "As long as you take me away, I will tell you the biggest secret in the dark spring." Lin Sun was stunned. "Why are you in a hurry to leave?" The clear voice of a child in the water drop said, "I want to find that swordsman. It was he who gave me a name and used the wooden sword to suppress the original power of the dark spring, so that I could awaken my spirituality smoothly. For me, this is like a kindness of enlightenment, and I should repay him." Chapter 3262. Return the Favor. Lin Sun couldn't help but look at Ling Yuan and said, "The swordsman has recultivated in the samsara. Even if you have the chance to leave the ruins of Tao, where can you find him?" Ling Yuan said in a clear voice, "As long as I look for him, I'm sure I can find him." Lin Sun was stunned and said, "Let's go. Take me to the dark spring." He was also curious about the mystery of the 3-inch wooden sword that the swordsman suppressed in the dark spring. "Come on." Ling Yuan was happy and took Lin Sun and Xia Ji to the distance. Along the way, Ling Yuan led the mist that enveloped the heaven and earth to disperse, which made Lin Sun secretly amazed. Ling Yuan deserved to be the ancestor of rules born in the origin of chaos in this world. The power controlled by Ling Yuan was obviously from the same origin as the mist that could suppress the spiritual awareness of the practitioners. Soon, a small puddle appeared in the air of chaos. There was a spring under the small puddle. Streams of chaos spring water that looked like pearls flowed out of the spring. Shockingly enough, they were all condensed from the power of chaos and contained an inconceivable power of chaos. If you could take out the wooden sword, I can leave, Ling Yuan said expectantly. Lin Sun stepped forward and stared at the spring. Through his pure aura of chaos, he could vaguely see a light and shadow looming in the depths of the spring. If one looked carefully, that wisp of light was surprisingly a 3-inch long, slender, and nimble wooden sword. The sword looked small, but the aura it emitted suppressed the power of chaos in the spring, which was extremely incredible. Even if you can't take the sword, you can leave early, Xia Ji couldn't help saying. Ling Yuan said, no, the senior swordsman said that only those who can take the sword can leave with him. Xia Ji showed a rare smile and said, what if we can take the sword but can't take you with us? Ling Yuan was anxious and said, I will follow you all the time. Xia Ji was amused and said to Lin Sun, shall we take him with us? Lin Sun could see that Xia Ji liked Ling Yuan very much, so he immediately said with a smile, as long as you agree, we can take him with us. Ling Yuan immediately begged pitifully, sister, please take me away. Xia Ji stretched out her hand and said, then jump onto my palm. Ling Yuan jumped up without hesitation. At that moment, Xia Ji smiled so brightly that her eyes curved into crescent moons. This little guy is really interesting. She held the droplet-like spiritual essence in her palm, blinking her eyes as she looked at it. Lin Sun took a deep breath, stretched out his palms and fingers, and suddenly released a swallowing force. Voila! The spring of chaos in the puddle tumbled violently and was swallowed up in an instant. In the eye of the spring, a stream of chaos flowed into Lin Sun's palm. This was the power of the origin of chaos, which was 10 times more precious than the fruit of chaos. For Lin Sun, this was naturally an unexpected gain. But soon, Lin Sun couldn't help frowning and showing a strange expression. The 3-inch wooden sword that was suppressed in the depths of the spring merely trembled slightly before it struggled free of his swallowing force like a swimming fish. Lin Sun tried many times, but it was still the same. Ling Yuan, what exactly is this wooden sword suppressing? Asked Lin Sun. Ling Yuan said in a clear voice, the depths of this dark spring is the heart of chaos of this world, and it's just like my mother's nest. But a very long time ago, a fellow called Taichu utilized his own strength to refine the heart of chaos, so that when my spiritual sense awakens one day, it would belong to him at the first possible moment. Ling Yuan paused for a moment and continued. However, that swordsman suppressed the heart of chaos with the wooden sword all those years ago, and it allowed me to avoid this calamity when my spiritual sense awakens. Lin Sun was shocked in his heart. So Taichu Dominator had come here all those years ago and refined the heart of chaos that gave birth to Ling Yuan. What was the heart of chaos? It was the core of the origin of chaos, and it was like the heart of a human. To Ling Yuan, the heart of chaos was her mother's nest. All those years ago, Taichu Dominator controlled the heart of chaos so that it would submit to him when Ling Yuan was born and be of use to him. But obviously, the appearance of that swordsman had changed all of this. Lin Sun pondered for a moment and said, then what would happen to the heart of chaos if I took the wooden sword away? I don't know. Ling Yuan answered straightforwardly. The corners of Lin Sun's mouth twitched, and he said, then I'll give it a try. As he spoke, he asked Xia Ji and Ling Yuan to move towards the distance while he stood alone before the dim spring, and he pondered deeply for a long time before his figure suddenly transformed into a strand of light that entered the spring. Bang! At that instant, it was as if he'd entered a chaotic black hole, and his surroundings were filled with the boundless aura of the origin of chaos. In next to no time, Lin Sun saw the wooden sword. The 10 centimeters long sword seemed to be simple, unadorned, and exuberant. However, in Lin Sun's eyes, this sword carried a strand of peerlessly terrifying might. It seemed as if its might could crush the ages and annihilate all the gods. Lin Sun's heart shook. The 10 centimeters wooden sword was clearly an extremely ordinary sword, but because of its terrifying, imposing aura, it caused the sword to become completely different. This wooden sword was left behind by that swordsman before he reincarnated, and the aura on the sword represents his strongest attainments in the Grand Tao. After experiencing the passage of countless years, his aura is still formidable to such an extent, as expected of a legendary figure. Besides sighing with emotion, a strong impulse surged in Lin Sun's heart. When he was in the mortal transformation world, he didn't have the chance to fight Chen Shi, Tai Chu, and the swordsman's Tao Karma. Now, he could give it a try. As he pondered, he quietly circulated his cultivation and enveloped the wooden sword. Clang! At that instant, a strand of sword hum seemed to resound, and the 10 centimeters wooden sword burst out with peerlessly fierce sword intent that fought against Lin Sun's cultivation. Bang! The nearby chaotic aura became chaotic and turbulent, and the incredible sword intent spread out from the 10 centimeters wooden sword like a landslide and a tsunami. Lin Sun exerted all his strength and used his Tao as a furnace in an attempt to suppress it, and an extremely intense conflict arose between the two. Time passed slowly. The sword intent of the 10 centimeters wooden sword grew stronger and stronger, and it revealed endless profound killing intent. However, Lin Sun's cultivation continued to grow stronger, and he had been firmly restraining the 10 centimeters wooden sword. It was just like a needle against an awn. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun felt extremely pressured. The power of the 10 centimeters wooden sword was far beyond the level of infinite Tao Lord. Although it was only a wave of power, it represented the peak of the swordsman's charm. However, the more it was like this, the more Lin Sun's potential was stimulated, and it made Lin Sun's fighting spirit soar and his blood boil. From the beginning of the mortal transformation world until now, his cultivation had improved extremely quickly, but he had always been lacking a worthy opponent. As a result, what he lacked the most now was similar words. This kind of tempering, and in the battle, Lin Sun could clearly feel that his cultivation was being tempered, and the accumulated potential of the great Tao was all stimulated in this fierce confrontation. After a full 4 hours, Lin Sun only felt a sense of fatigue spread throughout his body, and only then did he realize that his cultivation was almost exhausted in this fierce confrontation. He immediately stopped, and his eyes stared at the 10 centimeters wooden sword that was buzzing and trembling, and said, "I'll fight with you again next time." With that, his figure flashed, and he left the Spring of Darkness. How was it? Xia Ji, who had been waiting outside the Spring of Darkness, couldn't help but ask. It should not be a big problem to take the wooden sword away, but it will take some time, Lin Sun said with a smile. Although he failed to subdue the 10 centimeters wooden sword and take it away this time, for Lin Sun, the harvest was great, and his potential of the great Tao was excavated and tempered. This was no different from an epiphany in cultivation. Moreover, the power of chaos gushing out of the Spring of Darkness could also be regarded as a good fortune. Absorbing and refining it would be of great benefit to the progress of one's cultivation. In Lin Sun's eyes, it was no different from an excellent place for cultivation. From this day on, Lin Sun and Xia Ji simply stayed beside the Spring of Darkness, using the power of chaos here to cultivate. Both of them benefited a lot. Every few days, Lin Sun would plunge into the depths of the Spring of Darkness to fight fiercely with the 10 centimeters wooden sword, and when he was exhausted, he would return and seize the time to recover his strength and cultivation. While meditating, he felt the changes in his potential and strength, and then recalled the enlightenment he had when he fought with the 10 centimeters wooden sword, which allowed Lin Sun's cultivation to be tempered further, and it also produced an extremely obvious improvement. 3 months later, in a palace on the top of a mountain in the dark world. If Lin Sun didn't suffer misfortune, the amount of fog spirits in his hands would have been enough to attract the fruit of chaos and leave the dark world. But until now, none of this has happened. Yu Jiang, who was dressed in a fiery robe, paced back and forth with a gloomy expression. During this period of time, the messengers of the Sun tribe could be said to be sitting on pins and needles. Lin Sun's strength made them feel a serious threat, and they couldn't be at ease as long as Lin Sun didn't leave. In these 3 months, he didn't come to take revenge, and there was no movement at all. It would be good if someone could go to the Spring of Darkness and inquire about it, the old man in the white robe, Tu Shan Lung, said in a low voice. The others in the palace looked at each other and fell silent. Who would be tired of living and go to the Spring of Darkness to inquire about it at this time? Seeing that no one spoke, Tu Shan Lung felt an indescribable depression in his heart. So what if he was in the boundless realm? When he sensed a fatal threat, he would still be afraid and timid. After a while, Tu Shan Lung said in a hoarse voice, "Everyone, let me tell you a piece of bad news. I've already contacted my master, and he has given a death order that we are not allowed to leave the dark world." All of a sudden, the expressions of the people in the palace changed. Even if they couldn't defeat Lin Sun, they still had a chance to escape from the dark world, so they weren't too afraid. But if they stayed in the dark world, they would be attacked by Lin Sun sooner or later. It could be said that the order of the master of the destiny law of the Sun tribe was equivalent to directly cutting off their way out. Chapter 3263. What should we do now? Someone said angrily. They were all boundless realm cultivators who had been cultivating for countless years. Who didn't know that the Order for Most sect was asking them to fight against Lin Sun at the cost of their lives? We surrendered to the leader of the Taichu sect and have achieved what we have today after countless years of battles. If it was an order from the leader himself, I wouldn't frown even if I have to fight to the death. But as far as I know, neither the leader nor Miss has given any instructions to deal with Lin Sun. Someone said in a low voice. The meaning of his words was clear. It was the idea of the Dark River Taoist master to deal with Lin Sun. Everyone's eyes flickered with different thoughts. After a while, Tu Shan Lung sighed and said, "Well, if you want to leave, you can leave now. I won't force you, and I won't hold a grudge against you because of this." The others looked at each other in confusion. "Brother Tu Shan, what are you going to do?" Yu Jiang asked. "I'll stay." Tu Shan Lung's face became extremely calm. "My life was saved by the leader, and it's time to hand it over." The atmosphere in the hall suddenly became oppressive. Boom! Suddenly, the world shook. Everyone in the hall was shocked and stood up one after another. The heavens and the earth outside the hall seemed to have suffered the impact of some sort of terrifying force, and it shook violently without end, causing it to seem as if the heavens and the earth were shaking. "What's going on?" Someone was shocked. They had been in the dark world for many years, but they had never seen such a big movement. It was as if someone was going to turn the world upside down. It must have something to do with Lin Sun. Tu Shan Lung looked serious. "Everyone, if you want to leave, leave now. We can't stay in the dark world any longer." An indescribable feeling of melancholy rose in his heart. Who would have thought that Lin Sun could make them live in fear all day long? On the same day, a group of destiny messengers of the Sun tribe left. They had collected enough fog spirits in the past years, so it was not difficult for them to leave the dark world, even though they knew it would bring great trouble to them. But no one cared. After all, there was still the severing path in the 9 heavens of the myriad god domain, and the Sun clan's emissaries didn't think that they would be able to pass through the numerous obstacles and arrive at the profound god domain in a short period of time. So long as they didn't go to the profound god domain, then no matter how furious the Sun tribe's master of destiny, Minghe, was, he wouldn't be able to do anything to them. In the end, only Tu Shan Lung and the 19 Sun clan messengers of destiny were left. Just as Tu Shan Lung expected, Lin Sun was the one who caused that shocking change. At this moment, in the depths of the dark spring, a 3-inch wooden sword floated in front of Lin Sun. "Thank you, Senior." Lin Sun cupped his hands. He was thanking the senior swordsman. In these 3 months, he had fought with the 3-inch wooden sword 12 times, and had also tempered his cultivation 12 times. Not only had his potential been completely unearthed and consolidated, even his cultivation had improved greatly. Faintly, Lin Sun even had a feeling that his cultivation was close to perfection. If so, he would be no different from Boundless Town Master. However, Lin Sun's current combat power had already far surpassed that of the infinite Taoist lord. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk, the 3-inch wooden sword fell into Lin's hand. Then he looked deeper into the depths. That was where the heart of chaos origins of the dark world resided, and it surged with the cryptic aura of the origin of chaos. Besides that, there was a mysterious and taboo force around the source heart of chaos, and it was a force that Lin Sun was too familiar with. Clearly, it came from the same source as the grand primordium law that enveloped the ruins of creation. The 3-inch wooden sword was left behind by senior swordsman before he reincarnated. According to what Ling Yuan said, the absolute beginning rule should have appeared even earlier. If that's the case, then what kind of cultivation did absolute beginning have at that time? Thinking of this, Lin Sun suddenly smiled. He would know once he tried it. He casually stabbed out with his finger. Whoosh! A sword chi shot out, which contained the profound meaning of nirvana. It seemed to be an understatement, but in fact, it was the peak attack of Lin Sun's current cultivation. Boom! The heart of chaos shook while the laws of the absolute beginning that enveloped the surroundings suddenly flashed up, and it formed a strange and mysterious decree that was filled with the aura of tribulation. When Lin Sun's sword chi and the decree collided, it was like two supreme paths of cultivation were colliding at this instant. The entire dark world trembled as a result, and horrifying cracks appeared in the boundless void. However, such a scene of destruction vanished in the blink of an eye. On the other hand, the laws of the absolute beginning in the heart of chaos at the depths of the dark spring had completely collapsed and vanished. Only the sword chi that Lin Sun released was still floating and flowing with a miraculous glow of the Tao. Compared to the 3-inch wooden sword, the laws of the absolute beginning are slightly weaker. This should not be the power of the absolute beginning dominator at his peak, and it should be something he left behind when he entered the dark world for the first time. Lin Sun meditated for a moment, and then he turned around and left. He wasn't interested in occupying the heart of chaos origins of the dark world. He didn't need to utilize the heart of chaos to improve his cultivation. When one's cultivation reached such a level, one's attitude towards opportunities had changed. In the past, he would absolutely not hesitate to refine and take the heart of chaotic origins. But now, he'd realized that the existence of the heart of chaotic origins maintained the energy of the laws of the entire dark world. It was like the mother of a world, and taking it away would cause this expanse of the heavens and the earth to suffer irreparable damage. If so, the cultivators who entered the dark world in the future would probably have no chance to leave through the heavenly gate, and it would be impossible for them to enter the spirit's realm to go to the next heaven realm. This was undoubtedly equivalent to cutting off the path of cultivation for many cultivators. In the past, absolute beginning didn't do this, and neither did the swordsman. It was probably because of this mentality. Did you succeed? When she saw Lin Sun's figure flashing out of the dark spring, Xia Ji, who was meditating at the side, couldn't help but look over. Lin Sun nodded with a smile. Xia Ji immediately smiled. She turned her hand and took out a crystal-clear water droplet. Her voice was as pleasant as the sound of nature, and it revealed a trace of doting. Little Ling Yuan, you can go with us now. Great! Ling Yuan cheered and floated in the air excitedly, flashing back and forth. Here's your wooden sword. Lin Sun handed over the 3-inch wooden sword. Take this thing with you. As long as you see its master, whether you recognize him or not, this sword will respond to him. Clatter, the water droplet suddenly surged, and the water rippled, covering the 3-inch wooden sword and putting it away. Ling Yuan said gratefully, "Thank you, senior." Lin Sun was speechless. Xia Ji rubbed the water droplet and said, "You call me sister. How can you call him senior?" Ling Yuan said, "I see. I should call him brother-in-law." Lin Sun was stunned at first, and then he laughed heartily. Xia Ji couldn't help but smile brightly. She was never a shy woman, not before, not now. As long as she was happy, she would show it in front of Lin Sun. Let's go. Let's get rid of those enemies and leave the dark world. Lin Sun said. They had let those enemies live for 3 more months. It was time to clean up the mess. In the hall on the top of the mountain, Tushan Lung, dressed in a white robe, sat there, looking at the map on the brown animal skin calmly and attentively with his turbid eyes. On both sides of the hall sat the other 18 messengers of destiny. The atmosphere was extremely quiet. When Lin Sun arrived, he saw such a scene. Because of his arrival, the quiet atmosphere in the hall was broken. The 18 messengers of destiny stood up together and became alert at the first time. They looked surprised, dignified, and vicious. In the central seat, Tushan Lung put away the map, looked at Lin Sun and Xia Ji outside the hall, and said with emotion, "I knew that the restriction around this place couldn't stop you at all. Why don't you run away?" Lin Sun glanced around the hall and asked, "Instead of hiding, it's better to fight with you in the open. Even if I die, I can die honorably." Tushan Lung stood up slowly and said calmly, "Taoism Peer Lin, can I ask you some questions before you start?" "Go ahead." Lin Sun said concisely, casually, and naturally. Tushan asked coldly, "Since you started your cultivation, have you ever thought about why you started your cultivation?" Lin Sun was surprised. He didn't expect that Tushan Lung would ask such a question. After thinking for a moment, he said, "At first, I wanted to survive. When he was a child, he and Lu Boya lived in the mine prison. At that time, he was weak and sick. If it weren't for Lu Boya's careful care and teaching him the way of cultivation, it was almost impossible for him to survive. I didn't expect that such a powerful person like you just wanted to survive at the beginning." Tushan Lung was stunned for a moment, and then asked, "When the problem of survival was solved, why did you persist on the path of cultivation until now?" "Revenge," Lin Sun said without hesitation. Tushan Lung's eyes became subtle. "What about now? You already have the power to defeat the infinite Tao Lord, and you're not far from the real infinite dominator. Why do you cultivate now?" "There aren't so many whys in this world," Lin Sun said softly. "The reason of cultivation is simple. For me, cultivation is just like breathing, every move and every thought. It's just like the process of life and death for all mortals since they were born. But if you cling to the reason of cultivation, you will be at a disadvantage. It's very easy to turn into a cage in your heart, and you can't get out." Speaking of this, Lin Sun's state of mind became more and more ethereal and pure. At the beginning of cultivation, he wanted to survive. Later, he wanted to take revenge. But now, cultivation had long been a part of his life. It was natural, free. Why'd he need any reason? "Turn into a cage in your heart, and you can't get out," Tushan Lung murmured. After a while, he slightly cupped his hands and said, "I've learned a lot." Then he straightened up and looked unprecedentedly calm. "Taoism Peer Lin, you can start now."